Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case. The case of Cynthia George. On an afternoon on June 16, 2001, an attack at a gas station in Akron, Ohio, shattered the peaceful atmosphere and claimed the life of a successful businessman once admired by the upper class. Ed George and Cynthia George were famous residents and were considered the wealthiest in the state of Agaya, USA. Ed was a successful Lebanese businessman who owned a banquet hall and a nightclub. He was one of 8 children in a Lebanese Catholic family. After completing his education at the University of Michigan, he joined the family business founded by his father, Edwin George, in 1948. Although the original building was destroyed by fire, Ed rebuilt it and expanded the venue to include an entertainment center for events. During its peak, the establishment hosted renowned musical acts. Cynthia George, Ed's wife, was a charming and attractive socialite, known for her petite frame, blonde hair, and striking blue eyes. They had 7 children together. Cynthia grew up in North Canton in a low-income family. Her father worked as a miner, and her mother took care of the home and children. Lacking exposure to wealth, Cynthia began working at a young age. Although she couldn't afford higher education, she quickly realized that her looks could provide her with a path to a more comfortable life, leading her to pursue a career as a dancer. At this time, Cynthia, a 20-year-old, attended a nightclub casting call in 1978, managed by Ed, who was 15 years her senior. Although she didn't get the job, she caught Ed's attention and they began dating. He seemed to be a convinced Catholic and was in no hurry to get married. However, after 6 years together, they got married in a lavish ceremony attended by over 500 guests. This marriage fulfilled Cynthia's dream of a luxurious lifestyle. Cynthia and Ed moved into a spacious mansion with 5 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms. First of all, they wanted children, and over the next few years, Cynthia gave birth to 4 daughters. Ed felt this wasn't enough, so they adopted 2 boys. In 1994, at the age of 40, Cynthia became pregnant again and had another girl. The family comfortably managed their large household with the help of servants and a steady income from an upscale restaurant at the club. Despite his busy work schedule, Ed always made time for his children. He would comb his daughter's hair every morning, assist with their homework in the evenings. Being a person with a healthy lifestyle, he is never absent from any sporting event. Meanwhile, Cynthia relies heavily on nannies to take care of her children and enjoys a leisurely life of partying and shopping. Her husband supported this lifestyle, giving her plenty of freedom. While his substantial wealth, Cynthia often complained about receiving too little money, even though she indulged in whatever she wanted. In fact, Cynthia turned out to be not such a decent woman as she initially seemed. From the first years of marriage, she had lovers that her husband did not suspect. She flirted and met different men right in his club. One of her main lovers was Jeff Zack, a tall and charming man known for his appeal to women. He had Israeli roots. By 1976, he dropped out of school and decided to move to his homeland to study his Jewish origins. He became a citizen of Israel and even served in the army as a paratrooper. Jeff was multilingual and claimed to be a special agent involved in real combat operations. After 3 years, he returned to the United States. At 29, he met a beautiful brunette named Bonnie Cook in an Arizona restaurant. They quickly fell in love, decided to solidify their union by marriage, and then have children. During this time, Bonnie discovered a different side of her husband. She noticed that Jeff seemed to have 2 contrasting personalities. One was calm and gentle, while the other was aggressive and cruel. These personalities appear unpredictably. 2 years after their wedding, they welcomed a son. During this period, Jeff attempted to start a new business. He had many different startup ideas, but none were successful. They managed to make ends meet and moved into a comfortable 2-story house in the small town of Stowe, Agaya. Here, Jeff began a business involving vending machines. Although he became somewhat calmer over time, he still frequently experienced angry outbursts. His violent nature even led to several legal issues. Shortly after moving in one evening, Bonnie and Jeff were dining at Ed's club when Bonnie noticed her husband staring intently at a beautiful stranger. During dinner, Jeff even complimented the blonde multiple times, which greatly upset Bonnie. This attractive woman was Cynthia. That night, Jeff also met Ed, the owner of the club, and realized that building a friendship with him could significantly benefit his business. He spent the rest of the evening socializing with Ed and his wife, leaving Bonnie alone at the table. Jeff and Ed quickly hit it off and began a friendship. Eventually, Bonnie and Cynthia also grew close, regularly visiting each other's families and celebrating holidays together. Ed invested in Jeff's business by purchasing 100 vending machines and connecting him with valuable partnerships. This investment allowed Jeff to place machines in prime locations throughout the city, leading to the success of his business. Despite the rapid development of the business, soon, Bonnie became the main breadwinner of the family. Her career as a real estate agent was thriving. During this time, Jeff retired a little from business Respawn and spent more time with their son. The boy helped service vending machines, buy products for them, and carry out scheduled repairs. Jeff also started attending his son's training sessions and sporting events. Despite the fact that the life of both families seemed ideal from the outside, problems continued inside. Cynthia, who was 40 years old at the time, struggled with depression. Her friends encouraged her to participate in a local beauty contest in Agaya in 2000, specifically for married women over 21. Although Cynthia met the age requirement, she would be competing against younger women, many nearly half her age. Despite this challenge, she was determined and motivated. Winning the contest could allow her to represent her state at the national level and potentially advance to international competitions. The prizes included gold jewelry and complimentary beauty salon appointments. Cynthia was motivated by a desire to win and prove that she was the most beautiful in the city and the state. Her main goal was to gain influence. To prepare for the beauty contest, she tightened her diet and increased her training. Ultimately, Cynthia placed third in the competition. Despite her disappointment, she held her head high and smiled when the winner was announced. Competing at 40 years old as a mother of 7 against 20-year-olds was a significant achievement in itself. Even though she didn't win first place, her popularity grew. On June 16, 2001, multiple calls came into the police station near a gas station reporting an attack on the driver of an Ford SUV vehicle. 2 witnesses heard an explosion and saw a man, injured in the head, still alive, but struggling to breathe. Fortunately, a nearby nurse intervened, with help from another bystander, to pull the victim out of the car and provide first aid. They called emergency services and managed to keep the driver alive until paramedics arrived. The man was rushed to a medical center, where doctors did everything they could to save him. However, he tragically died just minutes after arrival. Law enforcement quickly secured the area and the vehicle. The driver's side window was shattered. The bullet entered through the cheek and exited the other side of the skull, breaking the passenger window. The deformed bullet was later discovered on the street near the car, while the cartridge case was found approximately 100 meters away from the parking lot. Witnesses, including a gas station employee, Carolyn Hyson, saw the victim arrive just before the attack. Shortly after, a motorcyclist pulled up, calmly approached the driver's side window, and attacked with weapons. Carolyn had a clear view of the criminal as he looked directly at her before he got on his motorcycle and rode away. He was a stocky man with dark hair, dressed entirely in black, resembling Ghost Rider, which seemed unusual for a summer day. However, he was wearing a helmet, so she couldn't see his face. Meanwhile, she was able to provide a detailed description of the motorcycle. It was a Street Fighter model, black and gray with neon green lights. She recalled that this distinctive man had been seen riding back and forth on the street multiple times, as if he was deliberately waiting for his target. After Carolyn reported the case at work, 2 managers ran out to the car. They were the ones who provided first aid and called an ambulance. The police quickly accessed the gas station's surveillance footage. but unfortunately, the quality was too poor to identify the attacker. They could see the motorcycle, but not its license plate. Detectives began investigating the identity of the murdered man to compile a list of potential suspects. To their surprise, they discovered that many people had negative opinions about him. Jeff was known to be difficult, hot-tempered, and often argued with neighbors over trivial matters. The investigation found that Jeff had several problematic business relationships and was involved with married women. He also had a criminal record. In 1981, he was convicted for running an illegal escort agency in Arizona. At the store where he frequently purchased supplies for his machines, people spoke poorly of him. He was notorious for flirting with attractive female employees, many of whom were schoolgirls working part-time. One witness recounted an incident involving a 17-year-old girl whom Jeff harassed to obtain her phone number. After she reluctantly provided it, he began calling her incessantly, offering money for intimate. This harassment continued until the girl's father intervened, threatening Jeff with legal action for corrupting a minor. There were other similar incidents, which contributed to his tarnished reputation. Detectives were aware of many individuals who might seek revenge against him. When the police arrived at Jeff's family's home to inform his wife about the incident, she was shocked and started to cry. They had been married for 15 years. Although she couldn't believe what had happened, she didn't appear especially surprised given her husband's controversial reputation and the many people who disliked him. Bonnie recounted the events of the day her husband was killed. That morning, Jeff was at home with his wife and son. He needed to go on his usual trip to check on the machines and restock them. Jeff asked his son for help, but the boy, upset with his father, refused. This prompted an argument between them, which Bonnie mentioned was a common occurrence. She herself was tired of the behavior of her husband, who treated her frankly badly. She admitted that she was thinking about divorce. Fortunately the teenager refused to help his father. It is possible that this saved his life. Typically, when disagreements arose, Jeff would react aggressively towards his son. During one instance, he attempted to involve Bonnie in an unpleasant discussion, but she chose to ignore him. He then claimed to have found a new woman who was superior to Bonnie in every way. She recognized this as another attempt to provoke her and continued to disregard his comment. To back up his claim, Jeff left the house, stating he was going to see his mistress. However, in reality, he went to wholesale warehouses to purchase items for vending machines. For several hours, he was in stores arranging merchandise, with this confirmed by witnesses and surveillance footage. The trips ended with a stop near a gas station where the killer acted quickly. There was reason to believe that Jeff was a big fan of lying. He frequently confided in a friend for the most intimate things. The police interviewed this friend, and he confirmed that Jeff tended to exaggerate his past to fit in with wealthier social circles. They also spoke with the victim's son. He supported his mother's account of a conflict with his father that morning. He struggled with mixed emotions regarding his parents. He loved his father, as they had grown closer recently. However, he was deeply troubled by his father's treatment of his mother, having witnessed years of emotional abuse and infidelity. The schoolboy really wanted to help find the killer. The numerous betrayals of Jeff seemed like a valuable clue. In addition, shortly before the massacre, Jeff deceived the contractors who were doing construction work. He paid them only about $7,000, less than the initial agreement, under a far-fetched pretext. However, these builders had a confirmed alibi. Bonnie stated that she didn't have specific suspicions about the killer, but she described Jeff as having a nasty and aggressive personality, which could lead him into trouble at any moment. She mentioned that he frequently received threatening messages and calls. One of the strange messages was saved on the answering machine, and she showed it to the police. It was received on Wednesday, June 13, at 2:55 p.m. from a man. According to Bonnie, when Jeff listened to the message, he became visibly agitated. Previously, he had taken such calls lightly, sometimes even joking about them, but this time he became restless and started pacing the room, deep in thought. Bonnie didn't know who the caller was, but she felt the voice on the recording sounded menacing. After the conversation, he said goodbye and mentioned they would speak again soon. Bonnie revealed that her husband left and went into hiding for several days after the call. He only returned home on Saturday morning, just before his death, and was in a very bad mood. The police interviewed all of Jeff's relatives and friends. Even his parents described Jeff as a swindler and a manipulator, someone unreliable, often distracted, who could also be involved in mischief and intimidation. During their investigation, officials discovered light illegal substances in Jeff's pockets, pointing to another area of inquiry. It seemed Jeff had connections to the criminal underworld, or perhaps he owed someone money, and this became the reason for the massacre. However, this line of investigation also led to no new findings. A forensic expert established more details surrounding the cause of death. The bullet entered through the right ear, damaging the oral cavity and causing severe bleeding. Within minutes, his lungs filled with blood, leading to choking. The wound itself turned out to be non-fatal. After talking to people involved with Jeff, the detectives eventually contacted the George, who had a close relationship with Jeff. They discovered that Cynthia was one of Jeff's mistresses, and their affair had lasted nearly a decade. This revelation drew significant attention during the investigation. The investigators also was revealed that Cynthia had a history of infidelity, maintaining several extramarital relationships. Before, when the detectives arrived at George's family mansion, Cynthia answered the door. She appeared disoriented, speaking slowly and in a confused manner. She claimed to already know about the murder because her husband showed her a newspaper that reported on Jeff's death on the front page. This event upset her. Cynthia was reluctant to answer many of their questions. She gave vague responses to some inquiries and ignored others altogether. Ed also responded evasively, denying any involvement of their family in the tragedy. They was clearly trying to avoid being connected to the investigation or appearing in police reports, as this could harm their reputation. Cynthia provided an alibi for both herself and Ed. Then that was verified. Surprisingly, Bonnie was fully aware of the affair between her husband and Cynthia. Jeff had informed his son about the relationship several years after it began. The reason for this disclosure was unclear. This painted a negative picture of Jeff's character. Bonnie suspected the affair as early as 1998, when she accidentally overheard a phone conversation between Jeff and Cynthia. Although she caught him being unfaithful, he managed to reassure her and deflect her concerns. Realizing she needed stronger evidence, Bonnie decided to spy on her husband and eventually confirmed her suspicions is right. By the end of 1999, Jeff confessed that he had been involved with Cynthia for 10 years. He claimed that their relationship had ended, and they were now just business partners. The mother of Jeff supported Bonnie's claims, stating that she was aware of her son's infidelities, including his involvement with Cynthia. Jeff frequently shared his personal thoughts with his mother, but she also insisted that he loved and respected Bonnie. After speaking with close friends of the George family, the police uncovered several intriguing details. Jeff met Cynthia at a club in 1991, where he pretended to be a doctor. When Cynthia discovered he was lying, he created a new story, claiming to be a special agent. This deception captivated Cynthia, a socialite. Interestingly, it was Cynthia who wrote the check to purchase the machines, not her husband. Her feelings for Jeff Stem was explained by Ed's preoccupation with work, which leaves her feeling neglected. Some suspected that Ed might have been aware of it for years. However, his strong Catholic beliefs prevented him from ending his marriage to the mother of his 7 children. Others thought he was completely unaware of the situation and blindly trusted his attractive wife. During the interrogation, the nanny shared valuable insights. She, describing Cynthia as self-centered, noted that Cynthia paid little attention to their children. She also saw Cynthia and Jeff, along with their children. She mentioned that Jeff treated his mistress similarly to how he treated his wife, including an incident where he hit Cynthia in public, leaving a bruise on her face. Additionally, it was revealed that Cynthia's youngest daughter might have been the result of an affair, as Jeff showed a lot of affection towards little girl and even took her for walks. It seemed unlikely that someone like him would invest time in another person's child. Due to these suspicions, Cynthia's youngest daughter had to undergo a DNA test, which confirmed that Jeff was indeed her father. After leaving the doctor's office with little girl, Ed stated that he didn't care about her biological parentage. He would love her, just like he loved his other children. Eventually, Cynthia admitted to having an affair with Jeff, but she kept her other secret relationships hidden. It's difficult to believe that Ed wasn't deeply troubled by his wife's infidelity at that moment. A few weeks before the murder, Ed tried to address some issues. He apparently suspected that Jeff was having an affair with Cynthia and wanted to protect her from him. However, Jeff refused the restraining order. Furthermore, Jeff's son reported that his father has shown fearful of Ed in the weeks leading up to the incident, making Ed the primary suspect. However, detectives lacked evidence to prove his involvement. Ed's alibi checked out, but this did not eliminate the possibility that he might have hired someone to commit the crime. A reward was offered for information regarding the murder. An informant, the ex-girlfriend of a man named John Zaffino, reached out to the police. She recalled that in 2001, John had mentioned beating up an Israeli. After hearing about the murder of Jeff Zak, who was identified as a former Israeli paratrooper with gray hair, she wondered if there was a connection. She contacted John, but he was evasive. It also came to light that John owned the same type of motorcycle that was seen at the scene of Jeff's murder. This prompts law enforcement to focus on the 36-year-old John, who had a reputation for being very cruel and dangerous. Immediately after, she ended the relationship because she feared for her safety. After experiencing multiple incidents of domestic violence, the woman decided to call John and asked several leading questions. Through their conversation, it became apparent that John might be involved in Jeff's death. She also engaged in several more similar phone calls, attempting to extract a confession from him. But he responded in a paranoid manner, avoiding direct answers. Upon investigating John, it was discovered that he had access to a .357 Magnum weapon, which was the same type as the Jeff's murder weapon. Interestingly, it was also confirmed by multiple witnesses that he knew Cynthia. The story is reenacted that Cynthia met John, an unemployed truck driver, in 2000, and they began an affair while she was still in a relationship with Jeff. 9 months later, in May 2001, she decided to end her relationship with Jeff and asked him to stop contacting her. However, Jeff was persistent and continued to call. Cynthia's husband noticed these unusual phone calls and suspected her. Whenever he picked up, the caller would hang up immediately. Ed did not want a public investigation and public attention to his private life, so he did nothing. Yet, he suspected that at the center of this problem was his wife's relationship with John. Details of their relationship become clearer when several expensive purchases give John are discovered. John claimed he was at a car dealership about 40 minutes from the crime scene at the time of the attack. However, the investigation revealed that he was actually on a mobile phone call and his location was tracked to a gas station. He only arrived at the car dealership 2 hours later. Investigators were able to track John's geolocation and review his phone records, leading them to suspect that Cynthia had ordered the crime. Adding to the evidence, a voice analysis confirmed that a threatening phone call received by Jeff was directed at John. The police believed that Jeff had begun threatening Cynthia when she decided to end their relationship, which he strongly opposed, which was quite consistent with Jeff's temperament. Feeling threatened, Cynthia decided to take action against him. On the tragic morning following an argument with his wife and son, Jeff looked up information about Cynthia, who he was deeply infatuated with and wanted to keep. The prosecution presented a clear narrative, but there was no evidence implicating Cynthia, so only John was taken into custody. John Zaffino's trial started on February 26, 2003. When called to testify on March 7, Cynthia chose to invoke her Fifth Amendment right, which allows her to avoid self-incrimination. Ed made the same choice. The main witness for the prosecution was John's ex-girlfriend, who detailed events from John's life leading up to the murder. The investigators also provided the murder weapon and confirmed that John owned it. Ballistic tests eliminated any doubts about this connection. However, there were no eyewitnesses identifying John as the perpetrator, nor was there any DNA evidence at the crime scene, which made the prosecutor's job more challenging. On March 10, 2003, after 4 hours of deliberation, John Zaffino was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. 23 years after the verdict, Bonnie approached John, stating that he was merely a pawn while Cynthia enjoyed a lavish lifestyle, asked if it was worth it. She likely hoped John would express his anger and reveal the truth, but he chose to remain silent. For a long time, the police lacked solid evidence against Cynthia. To bring her to justice, they gathered information about her involvement, piece by piece. On January 10, 2005, Cynthia was arrested while shopping. Ed posted bail of $2 million, allowing her to remain at home until her trial began in November 2005. The case gained momentum when new evidence emerged. Investigators discovered that John had planned to attack Jeff on May 8 while Jeff was relaxing in a national park. During this time, John was on a bridge talking on the phone with Cynthia for about 3 hours. She was also on another call with Jeff, coordinating their actions. The attack was interrupted when a park ranger noticed John's weapon case. When questioned, John claimed this was a misunderstanding and waiting for his girlfriend. A week later, a mushroom picker found a weapon in the park, which provided indirect evidence of Cynthia's involvement in the conspiracy. Ed hired a strong defense team of 5 lawyers for his wife, significantly reducing the prosecution's chances of success. During the trial, many revealing details emerged about Cynthia and her affair with John. The investigators was noted that Cynthia even paid for John's lawyers. One significant piece of evidence included recorded phone conversations between John and his sisters, which featured incriminating remarks in which he pressured Cynthia to uphold her part of their agreement. The defense argued that Cynthia had no reason to want Jeff dead and no motive to be involved in a murder plot. In contrast, the prosecution firmly claimed that Cynthia had a motive for the murder. After their breakup, Jeff tried to keep Cynthia in his life. They frequently argued, especially concerning their daughter, whom he threatened to take with him to Israel. Cynthia also felt at risk of their affair being revealed by Jeff, which could lead to her public humiliation. During the trial, 2 letters from Cynthia to John, who was in prison, were presented. These letters revealed their ongoing romantic relationship and showed that she remained deeply connected to him. In one letter, she sent him a Bible and expressed that she frequently prays for him. After facing public humiliation due to Cynthia's actions, Ed defended her against conspiracy charges. He emphasized his commitment to their marriage vows and refused to seek a divorce. Surprisingly, Cynthia chose not to testify in her defense, and John also did not take the stand. Ultimately, Cynthia was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and received, with the possibility of parole in a year. After the trial, Ed continued to defend his wife. He hired new lawyers who filed an appeal on her behalf. Cynthia served 16 months before she was released on March 22 after Ohio's 9th District Court of Appeals ruled that the circumstantial evidence presented by prosecutors, including phone records, correspondence, and financial documents, was insufficient to prove her guilty. Cynthia continues to live a normal life now. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Kathleen Volbeke. Australia's most notorious female serial killer was recently released after questions about her guilt emerged, but she still spent 2 decades in prison. Kathleen Volbeke was born in 1967 in Western Sydney. Her life was challenging from the start, as her mother chose to leave her violent husband, who had a criminal background. This man had a history that included a knife attack, though the victim survived. It remains unclear if Kathleen experienced domestic violence or abuse from her father, but her mother was murdered by him. After her mother left the abusive relationship, her husband tracked her down and stabbed her 24 times, resulting in her death. He received a 15-year prison sentence for this crime. At the time, young Kathleen was just 18 months old and had already lost both parents. Kathleen was raised by a family in Newcastle. She had an older sister, Leah. As a child, Kathleen discovered that her parents had actually adopted her, which left her deeply upset. At school, she had friends who understood her difficult situation and supported her as much as they could. However, her adoptive parents were strict and controlling, often punishing her, which created further problems for the 16-year-old. A staff member informed her that she was not legally adopted. She had only been taken out of state temporarily, meaning she was still in state care. Kathleen began to worry that her new parents were not going to finalize the adoption because they did not love her enough. She felt a lack of love and affection from them, especially when compared to the affection they had for their biological daughter. These feelings were further intensified by the hardships of her teenage years. Even her supportive friends had to deal with the negativity and depression she was experiencing during this time. As a result, Kathleen became curious about her biological parents to understand why they had abandoned her. She soon learned that her biological father had murdered her mother and was sentenced to a long prison term. This shocked her deeply. The situation was made worse by the fact that it was the 1980s, a time when people rarely sought help from psychologists or psychiatrists for personal issues. Instead of reaching out for support, the girl kept her feelings to herself and seldom talked about them, even with her closest friends. After finishing school, Kathleen chose to leave her foster home and move in with her friend Billy Joe, who lived with his mother. This change took place in 1985, marking the beginning of her adulthood. One night, she and Billy Joe went to a disco where she met Skryg Falbeck, a 24-year-old employee at a mining company. He was kind and caring, making Kathleen feel confident, calm, and protected. They enjoyed each other's company, loved to dance, and their relationship quickly grew deeper. That same year, they decided to move in together, and it seemed like their relationship was perfect. 2 years later, the couple married in a simple ceremony. A year later, Kathleen became pregnant. In 1989, they welcomed their first child, a healthy baby boy named Caleb. However, he had a small defect in his larynx that made it difficult for him to breathe when his mouth was closed, causing him to breathe heavily and loudly. Kathleen, who had grown up without parents, was determined to be a good mother. She cared for Caleb with love and care, especially given his condition, and she kept constant tabs on him. Sadly, her efforts were not enough. Just 19 days after his birth, Kathleen found Caleb dead in his crib. His death was a devastating blow to both parents. Doctors examined the child and determined he was a victim of sudden infant death syndrome. Affects infants under 1 year of age and can lead to sudden death without an identifiable cause. The investigation found no indications of foul play. Despite their heartbreak, the couple chose to try for another child. A year later, on June 3, 1990, they welcomed their son Patrick. For several months, he thrived and developed normally, with no signs of issues. However, on the night of October 18th, Kathleen heard a cry from the children's bedroom. Her husband rushed to the room and discovered Patrick in his crib, appearing blue. Kathleen was by the crib, screaming and crying in fear. The man administered CPR while Kathleen called for an ambulance, which arrived quickly. Thankfully, Patrick was still alive and was taken to the hospital for urgent care. There, doctors diagnosed him with epilepsy. Fortunately, Patrick was saved and later discharged. For a while, everything was calm, but in February 1991, another seizure occurred while Skryg, the child's father, was at work. His wife, Kathleen, called him in tears. She said the child had had another seizure and could not be saved. The grieving couple then decided to move away from Newcastle to start a new life elsewhere. They moved to the small town of Metland, a population of less than 2,000 people, about a 40-minute drive from their old home. Despite their past tragedies, they remained hopeful and continued trying for children, dreaming of a large family. Eventually, they welcomed their next daughter, Sarah. Sadly, she suffered from the same respiratory problems as their first child, Caleb. Her parents devoted themselves to her care and treatment, but despite their best efforts, Sarah was found dead in her bed on August 29, 1992, just 10 months after her birth. This loss was another devastating blow to them. Kathleen was deeply saddened by the misfortunes that had befallen her children. Frequent arguments between her and her husband had become a daily occurrence. Although they had decided to live separately, they had not yet filed for divorce. Kathleen repeatedly blamed herself for the deaths of her children, believing that she had failed to pay attention, missing important signs that could have helped them. She was devastated. At the time, there was no technology that could analyze the situation and identify any underlying problems. Doctors were baffled, declaring the children's deaths to be simply a series of tragic accidents. After a short separation, they got back together. They reunited and decided to move to a new home in Singleton, a town of about 5,000 people, not far from where they had lived. Their relationship improved, the challenges brought them closer together, and they became a stronger couple. They supported each other and continued to dream of having children. In late 1996, Kathleen became pregnant with their fourth child, 3 years after losing their daughter Sarah. Laura was born on August 7, 1997, and a year later the family celebrated her first birthday. The girl had no idea how significant this event was for her parents, especially given the sad history of sudden infant death syndrome affecting their previous children. The first year was especially difficult for them. They believed they could finally move past this challenging time. The arrival of their daughter helped improve their relationship. Kathleen and SKRYG were able to enjoy being parents. After enduring a tough decade of marriage, they thought things were finally on track. Sadly, just 6 months after their daughter's first birthday, Kathleen discovered Laura unresponsive. She called for an ambulance, but the doctors could not save the baby. The medical examiner who performed an autopsy on Laura was unable to determine the cause of death. While investigating the circumstances of Laura's death, it was discovered that Kathleen's other children had also died as infants and all had the same diagnosis, asphyxia, related to heart problems. However, medical experts were unable to piece together all the relevant information due to the lack of available data. The Kathleen family's life would never be the same after these events. In 1999, an anonymous person reported the circumstances surrounding the family to the police, stating that all of Kathleen's children had died mysteriously. The police received information and started investigating the family. They spoke with SKRYG Falbeck to gather details and express suspicions about the mother, who was always present when the children died suddenly and without explanation. After this conversation, the husband became suspicious of his wife upon learning about the investigation. He gave the police her personal belongings, including her diaries, which the police began to examine closely. These documents later became crucial to the case. Tensions within the family grew, and the husband started blaming his wife for the children's deaths. The following year, the couple split up. The police, after thoroughly reviewing all the case materials, suspected that the biological mother may have harmed her children. The Kathleen had lost a total of 4 babies. However, these suspicions alone were not enough for an arrest. They needed solid evidence, which they worked diligently to gather. A year after her separation from her husband, Kathleen was arrested on suspicion of murdering her 4 children. She denied the charges, claiming that they had all died from natural causes, but police believed she was being untruthful. She was eventually found guilty of 3 counts of premeditated murder and 1 count of manslaughter. The jury trial began in 2003. The prosecution argued that Kathleen strangled all 4 of her children, claiming it was the result of anger or stress related to postnatal depression. They said she had difficulty caring for her newborns, overwhelmed by sleepless nights and the constant crying of her children. In this distressed state, the prosecution claimed she made the decision to harm her children, which allegedly happened 4 times. However, no specific evidence of abuse was presented. The children were raised in a loving family environment where they were well cared for, always neatly dressed, and well fed. The bodies showed no signs of injury, such as abrasions or bruises, nor were there any indications of a struggle or acts of cruelty. The prosecution highlighted that Kathleen consistently discovered her deceased children, which increased suspicion. Kathleen was the last person to see the children alive, which raised suspicions. The prosecution found this coincidence hard to believe. In response, the defense argued that Kathleen was a housewife who spent all her time at home. In fact, she was the only person consistently with the children while her husband was at work. Therefore, it was natural for her to be the one to find them. The children died from sudden infant death syndrome, and this happened 4 times in a row. During the court proceedings, Kathleen remained composed and showed little emotion. She made brief statements, explaining that she did her best to care for the children and often struggled to sleep at night. However, whenever she managed to fall asleep or became distracted, a tragedy occurred. Kathleen maintained that she could never have harmed her children. Her calm demeanor throughout the trial was portrayed by the media as indifferent and without guilt for her actions. Kathleen's diary entries significantly influenced the verdict, but only selected excerpts were presented in court, in which she wrote, "I was so frustrated with myself, angry and sad after losing my temper, and I felt like the worst mother in the world. I was afraid she would abandon me like Sarah," referring to her feelings about her daughter Laura. While these statements expressed her self-blame, they did not explicitly admit guilt or describe the events leading up to her death. Despite this, her diary entries were interpreted only negatively, suggesting that she felt responsible for her children's deaths, although she did not admit to killing them. These records were not reviewed by psychologists or other experts who could have provided a more accurate interpretation. The prosecution strategically influenced the jury by reading brief excerpts while neglecting to mention that these were personal records of a woman mourning the loss of 4 children. The media's negative portrayal and the prosecutor's diary entries fostered doubts about the defendant. Additionally, the prosecutor referred to Meadows' Law, which consists of 3 rules established by a renowned British pediatrician, Roy Meadow. He stated that the death of a single baby is a tragedy, 2 deaths raise suspicion, and 3 are considered murder unless proven otherwise. In this case, there were 4 deaths. Caleb, the first child, died in 1989. This was followed by Patrick, who passed away in 1991 at just 8 months old due to epileptic seizures. Sarah died at night in 1993 when she was 10 months old. Laura, the last of the children, lived the longest, dying in 1999 at 18 months. Initially, Kathleen was considered a villain in the trial, with experts from various medical fields involved. They stated that sudden infant death syndrome can theoretically occur in one family, but the chances of this happening are very low. At that time, no one accepted responsibility for the tragic deaths. Were these events a coincidence in the Kathleen family? The numerous allegations contributed to the eventual guilty verdict. The case gained significant public attention and led to multiple trials across the country, where other mothers were also accused of causing their children's deaths due to sudden infant death syndrome. These women denied the allegations but were unable to prove their innocence, resulting in their arrest and facing intense scrutiny from prosecutors. Prosecutors even looked into Kathleen's past, which included a troubled childhood and a father in prison for killing his mother, which showed a penchant for violence. And the incriminating evidence against Kathleen came from her ex-husband, Skryg Falbik, who testified against her in court. She felt deeply betrayed by his testimony, as he believed at the time that she was responsible for the deaths of their children. In May 2003, after a 7-week trial, Catherine Volbig was convicted of 3 counts of murder and causing serious harm to her first son. When the verdict was read, she broke down in tears, overwhelmed with despair. Catherine believed she was innocent and did not expect to be found guilty. The media widely covered the case, portraying it as a triumph over one of Australia's most notorious female serial killers. Public sentiment towards Kathleen was extremely negative. She was widely hated. She received a 40-year prison sentence but could apply for parole after 30 years. Unsatisfied with her sentence, she appealed, leading to a review in 2005, which reduced her sentence to 30 years with early parole eligibility. After 25 years in prison, Kathleen faced hardship. She was treated with contempt and violence. Fortunately, Kathleen had friends who visited her regularly and believed she was innocent. Refusing to give up, she sought to overturn her conviction, filing an appeal and working with her attorneys from California, who brought in experts and new findings related to child mortality that could support her case. After 12 years in prison, in 2015, there was good reason to believe Kathleen was innocent. Several forensic experts reviewed the case documents and concluded that the children's deaths were due to natural causes. This new evidence prompted further investigations in 2018. Kathleen was ultimately left alone during the investigation. She spoke out to defend herself against the false accusations stemming from her diary entries. Kathleen explained that writing in her diary was her way of coping with life's challenges, and it provided her with relief. Doctors believed that the deaths of 4 babies in a couple suffering from phobias could be linked to a genetic mutation inherited from their parents. However, the scientific techniques available at that time were not reliable enough to confirm this, and mere words were insufficient. In 2020, an immunology professor from the Department of Genetic Medicine at the Australian National University joined the investigation. He initiated a global study into the situation faced by the defendant. Rare abnormalities related to genetic mutations were identified, leading to birth defects in Kathleen's children. Doctors confirmed that all 4 children in Kathleen's family had these rare mutations, which caused fatal seizures. The condition was determined to be a genetic abnormality, and there were no signs of violent death in these cases. In 2021, a group of prominent scientists from different areas of medicine, active in the 1990s, signed a petition in support of Kathleen, strongly asserting her innocence. They appealed to law enforcement, emphasizing Kathleen's innocence and referencing recent scientific discoveries and research that were unavailable at the time she was wrongly convicted. A new investigation was initiated by the end of 2022 and concluded in April 2023. Throughout this investigation, new evidence was gathered and submitted for review. During the same period, Kathleen's diaries were re-examined by experts in psychology and psychiatry. After reviewing the entries, they concluded that the diaries did not contain confessions. Instead, they reflected Kathleen's internal struggles, including her fears, anxiety, and grief related to post-traumatic stress. Forensic experts, who had investigated numerous infant murders, raised doubts about the possibility of strangling a child without leaving any evidence. As a result of these findings, the prosecutor's office was persuaded to reconsider the case's sentence and punishment. This new information sparked significant public outrage. Some people continued to believe in Kathleen's guilt and argued that she deserved to be in prison, while others were furious, questioning why an innocent woman had spent 20 years behind bars. On June 5, 2023, Kathleen Volbig was pardoned after serving 20 years of a prison sentence that was originally intended to last at least 25 years. This pardon allowed her to appeal to the Court of Appeal for Criminal Cases, which could provide her with financial compensation for the years she lost. However, she still faces the lasting effects of media coverage that has turned her case into a phenomenon known as Kathleen phobia, causing her to face hostility from strangers. Financial compensation cannot make up for the time she spent alone in prison, alongside dangerous criminals. Nor can it erase the humiliation and betrayal she experienced. Her life has truly been a nightmare. Kathleen is now 56 years old and continues to persevere despite everything. If her children had lived, her firstborn, Caleb, would be 34 years old, and her youngest daughter, Laura, would be 25. They might have had children of their own, allowing Kathleen to become a grandmother. Sadly, she has not had the chance to enjoy those joys in life. Currently, forensic medicine experts are debating the validity of the law of Meadows, arguing that it is fundamentally flawed. Many women have suffered as a result of this law and were acquitted later on. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Philippines family. Carol and Benoa met in 2009 while working at the same bank, where Benoa was the manager and Carol was an employee. At that time, Carol was going through a tough divorce. Benoa, who had also been married before, quickly became her love at first sight, and they began a passionate romance that surprised everyone around them. Many believed their relationship was just a fleeting affair, but they proved them wrong. Their feelings deepened, and they decided to officially marry. Carol remarried in April 2012, and this marriage appeared genuinely happy. The couple seemed deeply in love, enjoyed being sociable, and loved hosting parties. They even planned a dream trip to Tenerife for their second wedding anniversary, but sadly, that plan would never materialize. Tragically, just before their trip, both Carol and Benoa were killed. At the time of their deaths, they did not have children of their own. But they are planning to have children soon. Therefore, Carol spent a lot of time with Steban, the son of friends, also bring Carol's godson, showering him with gifts and affection. Steban was a calm, sweet, and well-mannered child who appreciated their kindness. The couple Carol and Benoa loved hosting gatherings for their family and friends, and on one such occasion, they decided to Steban along. This decision led Steban to the innocent child becoming a victim of a horrific crime. On April 18, 2014, gunshots were heard near a Filipino family's home. Eyewitnesses quickly contacted the police. At around 10:15 p.m., an inspector was patrolling nearby when he received the call and rushed to the scene. He parked slightly away from the house and approached cautiously, using tactical techniques from his police training. He kept his weapon ready, suspecting that the shooter might still be there, but it turned out that the attackers had already fled. When arrived, the officer was taken aback by the amount of blood around Carol and Benoa's cars. It resembled a slaughterhouse. At that moment, all three victims were still alive. The officer first attended to the child Steban, who was lying on the ground with a severe gunshot wound to the head. He immediately called for assistance and requested an ambulance. The wait for the medics felt like an eternity, but they arrived in time to provide first aid. Unfortunately, despite their efforts, 9-year-old Steban died shortly after reaching the hospital. After that, the doctors turned there to Carol. Although she was conscious, she had lost a big amount of blood and was in serious condition. She was able to speak to the police and described how the attacker first approached her husband, Benoa. Just after that, gunshots were fired. The inspector asked Carol if she recognized the attacker, but she replied no and then lost consciousness. Meanwhile, Benoa showed almost no signs of life and was unconscious. He was placed in an ambulance along with Carol, with hopes of being saved at the medical center. Unfortunately, he died en route. Carol was the only victim who arrived at the hospital alive. She was rushed into surgery, and throughout the night, the surgeons worked tirelessly to save her, but their efforts were in vain. Carol's family was informed about the incident, and her parents and sisters were left in shock, anxiously waiting and unsure if Carol would survive. In the end, they lost her. Law enforcement officers were interviewing everyone who have witnessed the shooting. The first witness was a neighbor who saw a suspicious woman running away from the scene through his window. She was petite and slender, wearing a dark short dress. After the shooting, she quickly crossed the road and disappeared. Another witness, a former Marine, also looked out when the shooting occurred. The whole incident happened in just a few seconds before the attacker fled. He confirmed that the shooter was a woman. This neighbor's vantage point allowed him to see her getting into a car and driving away with her headlights off. He was able to provide a description of the car. There was limited information available, as there were no details regarding the license plates, and the model and color of the car could only be estimated. The police couldn't identify the shooter because there were no clear images of her face or any distinguishing features. Local residents were troubled by the event. Everyone was shocked by the tragedy, and neighbors of Carol who had CCTV cameras willingly gave the police full access to their footage. This led to the discovery of a suspicious dark sedan that parked away from Carol's home about half an hour before they left at 9:48 p.m. Just 2 minutes after the attack, this dark sedan drove away with a woman inside. The description matched the vehicle that the suspect used to flee the scene. Unfortunately, all video footage did not show the license plates or any specific details about the car. It was only through meticulous analysis of the video that the police identified the car model as a BMW 5 Series. The crimes were clearly recorded on tape. Benoit was shot 3 times, and 3 additional shots were meant for Carol, while the child Stebbins suffered a single gunshot wound to the head. The shooter used a 9mm pistol and aimed primarily at the upper body, leaving little chance for survival. Once investigators discovered that Benoit had recognized the shooter, they began to thoroughly examine his contacts to identify potential suspects. Detectives analyzed Benoit's computer and reviewed all communication methods, including the messaging apps used by he. The police gradually discovered that Benoit was not the ideal husband he appeared to be. Behind the facade of a perfect marriage lay several troubling truths. Benoit, who held a prominent position at the bank, frequently pursued women and used his authority to flirt with them. Multiple bank employees reported his behavior. One witness, Sandra Chundel, came to the bank in 2013 seeking a job. After a brief introduction, the manager, Benoit, invited her to his office. Sandra described feeling very uncomfortable being alone with him. He acted like a predator, rarely making eye contact and instead focusing on her neckline, which made her feel embarrassed. It seemed as if he was undressing her with his eyes. Although Benoit is seen as a loving family man, but he had regular affairs, engaging in cheating on his wife frequently rather than infrequently. This thing led to a long list of potential suspects, including his co-workers and the husbands of the women he had affairs with. However, witness accounts pointed to a woman being involved in the shooting, which drew immediate attention from investigators. Law enforcement recognized that there were many who might bear a grudge against Benoit, which meant they had a week's worth of interviews and investigations ahead of them. Benoit has a strong personality. He often speaks bluntly and is quite strict, which makes some people feel uncomfortable and stay away from him. Despite this, he is a valued member of the workplace and a great manager. Investigations into bank employees provided the police with no new leads. The next theory considered was that of murder linked to workplace issues. By examining Benoit's transactions, the police identified a couple of suspects who had strong motives for murder. While investigating Benoa's computer, the police discovered notes about Anna Maria Troiano. She married Trojan at a young age, and their marriage was initially strong. However, in 2002, they encountered serious problems when her husband, Trojan, lost his job due to the metallurgical plant's closure. At that time, they already had children, and the family's financial difficulty deeply affected him, making it difficult for him to support the household. Consequently, Anna decided to take on a different role and start her own business. Anna opened a hair salon and quickly became popular with the locals, bringing in a good income for her family. Meanwhile, Trojan took on the role of a stay-at-home dad, taking care of their children. He later joined Anna in their business and helped her grow it further. The hair salon was thriving, and the couple realized they needed more funds to expand. They envisioned a full-service beauty salon and wanted to hire other beauty professionals. They believed this would be a successful venture, but it required a significant investment for renting more space and buying new equipment and supplies. To secure the necessary funds, they approached the bank for a loan, the same bank where Benoa and Carol were employed. They spoke directly with Carol, who gave them a verbal agreement for a €175,000 loan. Anna and Trojan was eager to grow their business, so they quickly used a large portion of their own savings to rent a larger space. They were waiting for a loan from the bank, but at the last minute, Benoa discovered their situation and deemed Anna and her husband's business too risky for a loan. Benoa was strongly opposed to lending them money and refused their loan application. Unfortunately, Anna and Trojan had not yet signed a formal loan agreement, so their arrangement with the bank was only verbal. The bank manager, Benoa, acted within his rights and could deny the loan based on these circumstances, as Carol's verbal promise had no legal standing. Meanwhile, Anna and Trojan are having a lot of financial trouble after investing all their money into the business and desperately needed the loan. In response to their predicament, Anna and Trojan decided to sue the bank, even though they knew their chances of winning were slim. Ultimately, they lost the case, worsening their financial difficulties. They faced significant challenges due to ongoing pressure, leading them to lose everything. Their rush to pay rent resulted in a massive debt of €50,000. Although they rented a new space, they lacked the funds for renovations, repairs, and equipment, leaving the premises unused and without income. They also incurred hefty legal fees from hiring good lawyers. Unable to pay off their large debt all at once, they were forced to sell their house and move in with their parents. This situation causes constant conflicts between them, putting them at risk of divorce. Investigators believe that financial troubles and legal issues may have been the motive for the crime, as Anna and Trojan were desperate and destitute, so they may have wanted revenge. As a result, the police began to investigate them as potential suspects. They initially considered that the perpetrator might be a woman. However, Anna had a solid alibi. She was in another city at the time of the murder, therefore, she was immediately eliminated from the suspect list. Detectives then turned their attention to Anna's husband, Trojan. They discovered that Trojan had a criminal history involving violence. Additionally, he drove a BMW 5 Series, and older models of this car were spotted on CCTV footage near the house of Carol. The evidence against him continued to mount, especially when threats from he to Carol were found on her mobile phone, which were related to a bank's denial of a loan. Based on this information, a search warrant was issued for Trojan's family home. On May 13, 2014, 3 weeks after the murder of the Benoa family, police visited the home of Trojan's parents, where he was living. The officers searched the entire house and focused particularly on Trojan's computer. They discovered that 6 weeks prior to the murders, he had attempted to find the address of a Filipino individual on the internet, Benoa. This information, combined with other evidence, suggested that the murders were not accidental. Trojan had a motive. He had threatened and sought out the addresses of Benoa and Carol, those he blamed for his financial issues. As part of the investigation, the investigators needed to question Trojan directly. During the interrogation, he appeared calm and provided explanations for each inquiry. However, the investigators found him dishonest in his answers, so they could not release him, considering him the main suspect. Ultimately, Trojan was charged with illegal possession of a weapon, but at his parents' house, the police could not find the gun used in the murder. Trojan's wife, Anna, spoke up to defend him, claiming that his criminal acts were a thing of the past a long time ago. She explained that he had been young when he fell in with a bad crowd and, after spending 6 months in prison, decided to change his life. Over the past 13 to 14 years, Trojan had led an honest life, making it unfair to judge him solely based on a mistake from his youth. Anna stating that he could never have killed 3 people at once, especially a 9-year-old child, Steban. He loved his children deeply, and it was hard to believe that a good family man could shoot a child. He also maintained that he had an alibi for the time of the murder, which the police could not disprove during their initial interrogation. According to Trojan, he was in Germany visiting family on April 18, 2014, and he arrived around 10 p.m., which would clear him of any guilt since the attack occurred at approximately 10:30 p.m. Furthermore, witness testimonies suggested that a woman was the actual shooter. This has complicated the investigation. Trojan, who was 192 centimeters tall and weighed around 130 kilograms, was unlikely to be confused with the small woman seen wearing a short dress. This thing led to Trojan exclusion from the list of suspects, resulting in his release. However, the investigation continued. Officers traveled to Stuttgart, Germany, under a court order where they met Mario Trojana, the brother of Trojan. Mario shared crucial information, revealing that Trojan had not arrived in Stuttgart until late Saturday evening, around 11:30 p.m., the day after the massacre of the Benoist family. He described Trojan as looking very tired and shabby. This new information shifted the direction of the investigation. It became clear that Trojan lacked an alibi, providing ample opportunity to commit the triple murder. 5 months after the violent attack on the Benoist family, Trojan was taken into custody by police and faced several additional interrogations. The investigators were determined to uncover the truth. Initially, Trojan claimed that he left home in the evening after arguing with his wife. He said he was going to Germany to visit his brother, Mario. However, during multiple interrogations, he changed his story. He stated that he intended to end his life due to various personal issues. While driving along a long country road, he claimed to have consumed a large amount of illegal substances. He then lost consciousness and only woke up around 5 o'clock in the morning. After regaining consciousness, he decided against end his life and set off to visit his brother Mario in Stuttgart. Trojan had a new alibi that allowed him to continue lying, but he inadvertently gave the police a clue. He drove a modern car equipped with a Wi-Fi module, which automatically connects to available networks. Investigators began reviewing footage from the security cameras of Benoist's neighbors. An officer noted that a BMW 5 Series, which the attacker used, had stopped near a gym. This gym offered free Wi-Fi, and records of all connections were maintained. This allowed them to verify whether the Trojan family's BMW was near Benoist's home during the time of the shooting. The car was actually recorded at this location at the time of the shooting. Trojan made a critical error by giving his clothes to the police for examination. When forensic experts searched his house, they discovered gunpowder residues on the clothing. It became clear that Trojan was responsible for the murders of family Benoist. The next step was to persuade the jury of his guilt. On September 10, 2014, Trojan was officially charged with triple premeditated murder. There was considerable confusion and deception surrounding the case. He continually altered his story in an attempt to evade responsibility. Investigators began to suspect that his wife, Anna, might also be involved, since witnesses reported seeing a woman at the crime scene. However, there was no evidence to prove Anna was guilty, so she was not charged. On February 6, 2017, Trojan stood trial before a jury. Relatives of Benoa's family, along with Steban's relatives, were present at the execution, joining together to demand justice. They sought to hold Trojan accountable for the lives he had taken. The prosecution outlined the crime. Trojan, furious Benoa and Carol due to his own financial troubles, decided to track down and kill the couple. When their child, Steban, saw his face, he murdered the boy to eliminate a witness. The prosecutor clarified that Carol had never met Trojan before, she only knew his wife, Anna, which is why she did not recognize him during the attack. The prosecutor argued that the witnesses who claimed to see a woman at the scene were mistaken and confused a passerby for the real killer. During the trial, relatives of Benoa and Carol spoke about they, describing them as kind, friendly people and are outstanding experts in their fields. Unfortunately, Carol's kindness may have led to tragedy. She tried to help the Trojan family by promising them financial support, but her husband, who was more experienced and cautious, thought it was too risky and refused to lend them money. While the situation was distressing for the Trojan family, it wasn't without options. They could have approached other banks for a loan or explored different solutions. Instead, they chose to retaliate by killing two bankers, Benoa and Carol, with Steban. During the hearing, the accused Trojan appeared with his face covered, a request made by his lawyer to uphold the presumption of innocence. Trojan showed a complete lack of understanding of the situation and maintained his innocence until the very end. His demeanor and confidence even seemed to sway the jury. His lawyers emphasized that he was a good father and could not possibly have shot another person's child, Steban. They also argued that the absence of a murder weapon, along with witness statements confirming the presence of women at the crime scene, made it impossible to accuse Trojan. It appeared that the jury was leaning towards acquittal. However, on the sixth day of the trial, crucial evidence emerged against Trojan. A video from his mobile phone was presented, which seemingly showed him accidentally capturing himself hiding the gun under a pillow. The fact that the gun was a rare model, linked to his criminal history, weighed heavily against him. Additionally, the gun left distinct traces of gunpowder that were identified as matching. This evidence contradicted his statements, shifting the case's momentum towards the prosecution. Trojan's lies ultimately became the critical turning point in the trial. The trial lasted 2 weeks, after which the jury was certain of Trojan's guilt. Trojan was convicted of 3 counts of premeditated murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The defendant has already appealed to both the Court of Cassation and the European Court of Human Rights, seeking release due to what he claims was an unjust verdict, but both appeals were denied. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Ilona Flint. On December 23, 2013, 22-year-old Ilona Flint finished her shift at a shopping center store, where she often worked late during the Christmas season. This night, she left work just after midnight, expecting her boyfriend to pick her up from the parking lot. However, he did not arrive and did not respond to her messages. Concerned, she reached out to her boyfriend's brother, whom she got along with well, and asked him for a ride home. He agreed to help her, but unfortunately, they never made it home. On that fateful night, a dangerous criminal chose to practice his murderous skills by targeting the Belvedere family. This decision led to a terrible tragedy. The Belvedere family was well respected and had a reputation for being good, honest, and crime-free. Ilona had just moved to San Diego, California, where she was lively, energetic, and determined. Love had blossomed between her and Gianni Belvedere, and they had announced their engagement shortly before the tragedy. They loved each other and were eager to start a family together. Gianni's parents had become very close to Ilona. They treated her like their own daughter, and they had a wonderful relationship from the very beginning. All of this contributed to their belief in a bright future for the couple. Not even their brightest dreams could protect them from the violent criminals of 2013. A shooting broke out in the parking lot of the Minville Shopping Center in San Diego. One of the store employees noticed a suspicious person and called the police. Before that, Ilona Flint frantically dialed 911, telling the dispatcher that a stranger was threatening her. The driver of the car she was in was her boyfriend's 2-year-old brother, Salvatore Belvedere. Suddenly, the call with Ilona was interrupted. The dispatcher sent patrol officers to the area to investigate. In just a few minutes, the patrol arrived at the incident scene. Inside the car, they found Ilona and Salvatore unconscious. Ilona was slumped in the front passenger seat, and police identified 2 gunshot wounds on her body, one in her chest and another in the back of her head, which was fatal. Despite brief tries to revive her, it became evident that Ilona would not wake up. Doctors later confirmed her death, noting that the assailant had shot both her and the driver while Ilona was on the phone. During the call with the dispatcher, no background noise or gunshots were heard. Police reviewed the call recording and interviewed the witness who reported the incident. She also did not hear any loud noises. As a result, police believe the attacker used a pistol with a silencer. The investigation confirmed that the assassin had a .22 caliber pistol. The boy, Salvatore, was in critical condition after being shot in the face, right between the eyes. When police arrived, he was still alive and was rushed to the hospital. Despite the doctor's efforts to save him, he fell into a coma and died 2 days later. This left the police without any valuable information from him. Forensic experts started by examining the vehicle where the Ilona and Salvatore were shot. Sadly, they found no evidence of a third person either inside or outside the car. They discovered that the vehicle in which Ilona and Salvatore were found belonged to Leonardo Belvedere, Salvatore's father. Police intended to inform the car owner about the tragic incident and also wanted to speak with Gianni, Ilona's new fiancé. However, they could not find Gianni at his home. Leonardo went to the shopping mall where the incident occurred and waited for news of Gianni. Leonardo was the first to notice that something was wrong. Gianni usually arrived at the mall early and waited for Ilona in the parking lot, so his absence caused concern. Leonardo tried to call him, but Gianni did not answer any calls or messages, which was completely unlike him. This unusual behavior prompted Leonardo to go looking for his son. The police issued a notice for Gianni in his green Toyota Camry. There was suspicion that Gianni was involved in the murder of Ilona and her brother Salvatore, possibly due to a conflict between young people that led to the tragedy. The search for Gianni and his car began throughout the city, as the police had a number of questions for him. They needed to determine if his girlfriend Ilona had any disputes with anyone that could have endangered her life. And they also needed to confirm his alibi. To get those answers, the police had to speak directly with Gianni. The first clue had emerged. Police had received information from dispatchers that could lead to a suspect. Police learned that shortly after Ilona contacted emergency services, a mall employee had called to report seeing a suspicious vehicle with an unknown man standing next to it. The man, who appeared to be of average height, was standing behind the driver's side window of the one vehicle. Although the witness did not hear any gunshots, screams, or signs of a struggle, she found the man's behavior unusual. He made some strange gestures before quickly returning to his car. Fortunately, the witness had taken a good look at the vehicle and provided police with a detailed description. The vehicle was very similar to the one Gianni had been driving when he went missing. At this point, police began to consider Ilona's fiancé, Gianni, as a prime suspect, as he was likely present at the crime scene. Police obtained surveillance footage, which further strengthened their belief in the reliability of an eyewitness account of the shooter. Based on the recordings, they created a description to help identify the suspect, a man of unknown race, of average height, wearing brown pants and a shirt with some resemblance to Gianni. This raised concerns for police, as it suggested a possible love triangle. Police speculated that Gianni had discovered Ilona and Salvatore's affair. It is believed that Gianni may have encountered them in the parking lot of a shopping mall. In a fit of rage, he is believed to have shot both of them with a pistol equipped with a silencer before fleeing the scene. While this scenario is common in love triangles, it remains a theory that needs to be confirmed. Friends of the couple have dismissed the police theories, insisting that Ilona had nothing to do with Salvatore. They believe that she was deeply in love with Gianni and that both young people were victims of an attack by an unknown assailant, while Gianni had nothing to do with the crime. There is even the possibility that he was kidnapped. Even with this testimony, the police still did not rule out Gianni as a suspect. The police returned to speak with Leonardo, the father of the Belvedere family. The police informed Leonardo that Gianni was considered one of the prime suspects in the case. However, for Gianni's family and friends, this was hard to believe. They could not imagine him being involved in any kind of heinous act. Gianni had always been a well-mannered and calm person. He did not associate with troublemakers. He was known for his intelligence, optimism, and ambitious plans for the future, including with his beloved Ilona. The idea that he could have resorted to violence against his own brother and fiancée seemed completely absurd. While the police searched for Gianni, his family reached out to him through the media, believing there had been a misunderstanding and that he would return home soon. Despite suspicions surrounding him, his mother and sister encouraged him to come back to clear his name. They also appealed to anyone who might have information about Gianni's whereabouts. Unfortunately, they received no significant leads. Police explored the possibility that someone else might be involved in the murders of the two young victims, yet they felt it was important to keep an eye on Gianni for any possible threats. They also looked into the involvement of organized crime, considering whether the victims might have been gang members or had connections to drug activities and deaths. However, there was no evidence linking them to illegal substances or criminal activity. Toxicology reports showed no traces of alcohol or drugs in their body, and neither had a criminal record or enemies who wanted to harm them. The crime appeared to be planned specifically targeting Ilona and Salvatore. The perpetrator acted with determination and confidence, leading police to dismiss the idea that the victims were simply random targets of a violent attack. Despite this, none of Gianni's acquaintances believed he could have carried out such a brutal crime. Nevertheless, police remained convinced that the incidents were closely tied to him and found his disappearance highly suspicious. Police decided to investigate the Gianni's mobile phone history. They found that his phone had been turned off at 11:45 p.m. on the night of the double murder and had not been turned back on since. Gianni's last call was to his cousin. The police contacted this relative to gather more information about their conversation that evening. The cousin confirmed that Gianni had called him but mentioned that nothing unusual was discussed. They casually chatted and Gianni simply mentioned he was going to the mall to pick up Ilona, as he usually did. That concluded their conversation. Ilona did not enjoy driving, despite having a driver's license, so Gianni always picked her up after work. Police were able to access Ilona's cell phone records, who was found dead in the mall parking lot. They discovered that shortly before her death, she had sent several text messages to Gianni, but he had ignored them. Ilona attempted to contact him after 2:45 p.m. but no one answered. She then called Gianni's brother Salvatore, asking him to pick her up from the parking lot. Salvatore agreed and drove to her location. It was revealed that they had been in a car in the parking lot from midnight to 1 a.m. Ilona was very worried about Gianni, prompting her to call friends, acquaintances, the local hospital, and the morgue to find him. This behavior was unusual for her, suggesting that she was increasingly worried that he might have had an accident on the way to the mall. On January 17, 2014, the police received an important tip in the case. A witness reported seeing a suspicious car parked near her home for an extended period. The abandoned vehicle was identified as Gianni's Toyota Camry, located in a remote area of Riverside, San Diego. The police were alarmed by a foul odor coming from the car, which piqued their interest. They quickly arrived at the scene and checked the car's license plates against their database, discovering that the plates were fake. Upon further investigation, they found out that the car belonged to the missing person, Gianni. Officers entered the car and noticed blood on the passenger seat, which was a concerning sign. While inspecting the vehicle, they also detected a strong odor of decomposition, particularly near the trunk. The police recognized this smell, indicating that a body was nearby. Unfortunately, they discovered the body of a person, believed to be Gianni, in an advanced state of decomposition. Due to the hot weather, dental records were needed for identification. A forensic expert confirmed the police suspicions. It was indeed Gianni. After the identification, the victim's family was informed of the tragic news. They were devastated, as they had held on to hope that their son would be safe. The police were faced with a serious situation. Who would want to harm these young individuals? A forensic examination revealed that Gianni had been dead for approximately 3 weeks before he was discovered. A bullet was found in his skull, which was the cause of Gianni's death. Based on the position of the body and the nature of the wounds, it appeared that the shooter was on his side when the shot was fired. The bullet entered behind Gianni's left ear, causing fatal injuries. He died of blood loss. Police analyzed the bullet that killed Gianni and matched it to the bullets that killed Salvatore and Ilona. Ballistics tests confirmed that all the bullets were fired from the same type of weapon. It is possible that all the victims were killed by the same person. Could it have been an accident? A deliberate crime resulted in the deaths of the young people. But the theory of a love triangle was eventually ruled out. The police decided to start their investigation from scratch. In the trunk of Gianni's car, forensic experts discovered several empty air freshener cans. These had been left behind by the attacker after repinning the buttons. This may have been an attempt to hide the smell of decomposition from the car for as long as possible. Although experts were unable to collect DNA samples from the suspect to identify the killer, they noted that the buttons on the air freshener cans had been secured with pieces of tape. After a thorough examination, the police discovered tiny traces of DNA on one of the tapes, hoping to gather clues about the mysterious killer. They entered this information into a database, but unfortunately, there were no matches. This suggests that the killer likely does not have a criminal record. However, this process was still valuable, as the system would automatically notify them if a matching DNA sample was ever added to the database. Despite this setback with the DNA, the case took a new turn soon after. Less than a day after Gianni's body was found, on January 18th, another incident occurred that initially appeared unrelated. During the investigation of the triple murder, police officers uncovered important clues. About an hour's drive from San Diego, security officers in San Clemente stopped a man at a checkpoint. He appeared nervous and suspicious during the inspection of his car, which revealed a large cache of weapons in the trunk. This included an AR-15 assault rifle, hundreds of rounds of ammunition, a .45 caliber pistol, and a .22 caliber pistol equipped with a rifled barrel and a homemade silencer. The man, heavily armed, was identified as Carlo Mercado, who was 29 years old at the time of his arrest. The police database indicated that Carlo legally owned 2 firearms. He did not have any previous convictions, and he was not listed as a potential threat in law enforcement records. As a result, he was released immediately, and his guns were confiscated. However, officers later discovered he also had an illegal pistol of that caliber. Given the presence of a homemade silencer, this illegal pistol might have been the weapon used in the triple murder. The police spent 4 months collecting evidence and preparing charges while waiting for the investigation to conclude. Special agents took charge of examining the confiscated weapons, focusing on the illegal distribution of firearms. Carlo had already admitted guilt for the illegal use of weapons after police offered him a plea deal. This deal was essential for them to formally request DNA samples from the Carlo. Once he agreed, the samples were collected and checked against the police database. This led to a match with DNA taken from the Scotch tape found in Gianni's car, which had previously been uploaded to the database. A ballistic examination of Carlo's pistol confirmed that it was the weapon used to shoot all 3 young victims. To further establish his connection to the crime, police analyzed geolocation data from Carlo's mobile phone. This analysis showed that he was near the shopping center at the time of the shooting. His motorcycle had broken down, which made it difficult for the police to find him initially, as he did not appear in most of the security camera footage. However, some footage did capture the motorcycle he used to get to the parking lot, where he was seen standing next to it. When Carlo spotted Gianni's car while he was waiting for her Ilona, Carlo saw it as a perfect chance to steal a vehicle. He attempted to threaten Gianni into handing over the car keys, but Gianni fought back. Gianni was unaware of Carlo's dangerous obsession with weapons. He fancied himself a killer and had long fantasized about using a gun. The police later discovered evidence of this obsession during their investigation. Carlo frequently searched the internet for information about weapons, often focusing on gun-related murders, including mass school shootings. His bizarre fantasies prompted him to act. He approached Gianni's car and, in one swift motion, pulled out a .22 caliber pistol. He shot Gianni at close range, then climbed into the car and pushed him into the passenger seat. Excited by the act of acting out his violent fantasy, he drove around the parking lot in Gianni's car before leaving the scene of the crime. Carlo drove to the nearest gas station, as confirmed by the geolocation on his phone. He then decided to go back to get his motorbike, which he had left in a parking lot. On the way back, he crashed into a car carrying Salvatore and Ilona. They recognized it as Gianni's car, and Ilona was excited to see her lover's car. She signaled Salvatore to come closer, but this turned out to be a grave mistake. When she realized that the driver was not her boyfriend, it was too late. Ilona panicked and tried to call emergency services, but was unable to finish the call because a bullet had hit her car. Carlo shot Ilona and Salvatore, the brother of the first victim. After killing them, he drove to a gas station and filled up Gianni's car, while the owner was still inside, having bled to death from a gunshot wound. The next morning, Carlo began looking into a murder that had occurred on Christmas Eve. Police later discovered Carlo's fingerprints on the gas cap of Gianni's car. Their efforts to collect and analyze evidence paid off. As a result, in April 2014, Carlo Mercado was arrested and charged with 3 counts of murder. Initially, Carlo maintained his innocence. He denied using a weapon against the victims, arguing that he did not know them and had no involvement in the murders. However, the prosecution continued to analyze the evidence, building a case that would ensure the criminal would be imprisoned for life. In June 2014, the trial began, with the prosecution arguing that the attack stemmed from a desire to steal Gianni's car. The prosecution claimed that Gianni had gone to the mall to meet Ilona and was waiting for her in the parking lot. While there, Gianni confronted Carlo, who had also come to the mall. In a fit of rage, Carlo used an unregistered pistol equipped with a silencer. After firing the shots, he fled in Gianni's car. Security cameras recorded the incident and Carlo realized that the police would be looking for the car. To avoid arrest, he changed the car's original license plate to a fake one, filled it with gas, and then returned to the mall to retrieve his motorcycle. Carlo returned to retrieve the motorcycle because he believed it might attract the attention of the police. At that time, Ilona and Salvatore saw Gianni's car while they were trying to find out what happened to Ilona's boyfriend. Instead of running away, Carlo chose to eliminate all witnesses. He used a pistol with a silencer to kill Ilona and Salvatore. The prosecutor's office believed that Carlo saw himself as a professional killer who could escape justice after killing 3 young people. This mindset persisted until the next trial, but just before that date in late July 2016, Carlo admitted his guilt and revealed many details about the crime. He admitted to using air freshener to cover up the smell of decomposing corpses in the trunk of his car. He even tried to sell the car a few weeks after the murders. However, after 3 weeks, the smell became too strong to ignore, so he abandoned the car outside the city. Carlo Mercado was eventually sentenced to 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. During the trial, Carlo showed no remorse. He remained calm, appearing indifferent to the proceedings. Carlo did not seek forgiveness from the victims' families. Surprisingly, he chose to waive his right to appeal, seemingly as a way of admitting his guilt for the murder of innocent young people. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Kelly Lane. Kelly Lane was an Australian beauty and a champion water polo athlete. Despite her success, she faced a series of unfortunate events that led to tragedy, leaving many unanswered questions about her story. Born in 1975, Kelly grew up in a sports-oriented family. Her father, originally known as Bim, later became a police officer named Robert Lane. Her mother, Sandra, worked in a medical institution and coached water polo. Kelly had a brother named Morgan. The family was affluent and lived in a prestigious area of Sydney, Australia. Kelly was a golden child, attending Lee High School and later Mayclara. After graduating, she enrolled at the University of Newcastle to study art and then attended the Australian College of Physical Education. During this time, she started her sports career, working as a physical education teacher and coach at a girls' high school. Following in her mother's footsteps, Kelly became a highly skilled water polo player, which made her famous in her city. Her parents were proud of her accomplishments and were themselves respected professionals. Kelly took part in almost all public events, especially sports-related ones, and had a bright future ahead. Her mother was both her coach and manager, dedicating a lot of time to Kelly's career. Initially, Sandra personally handled her daughter's training, but later Kelly was coached by a more experienced trainer. Kelly dedicated herself completely to sports. Her parents were supportive and actively helped her progress in her chosen path. Despite her hectic schedule, Kelly was calm and reserved. She had a fit, athletic body and natural beauty, seldom wearing makeup. Her attractiveness and sociable nature made her popular even in high school. In 1992, when she was finishing her studies, Kelly met Aaron. They had a lot in common and their relationship developed into a romance. At the age of 17, she unexpectedly became pregnant while still in school and, not ready to become a mother, she chose to have an abortion. Aaron supported her decision. In order to continue her athletic career, Kelly kept her pregnancy and abortion a secret, never telling her parents. By early 1994, Kelly's relationship with Aaron ended due to frequent arguments. She then began an affair with a married man and became pregnant at 19, despite using contraception. She did not plan to keep the child and decided to have another abortion. This decision was made in secret, as the father did not want the child either. Kelly sought a different clinic for more confidentiality but was initially refused because the pregnancy was too advanced for a safe procedure. She had to convince the doctors to perform the surgery, and they finally agreed. At that time, she was in her 20th week of pregnancy. Remarkably, during 5 months of intense training, no one noticed her condition because athletes often endure challenging situations. Kelly, determined to participate in the Olympic Games, did not show weakness or ask for special treatment. Her athleticism helped her maintain a fit appearance, aided by loose clothing. Sometimes, a woman's body structure can conceal a pregnancy until later stages, as was the case with Kelly. Although the abortion was traumatic, she felt relieved to have resolved the situation and continued with her life, pursuing sports and forming new relationships. In 1995, Kelly started dating a new boyfriend named Duncan, and they were together until 1998. Duncan professed his deep love for Kelly and expressed a desire to marry her. Both were athletes who enjoyed parties and entertainment. During this time, Kelly became pregnant again with an unwanted child. After her previous traumatic abortion, she was reluctant to seek medical help. Despite being pregnant, Kelly still chose to compete in sports and compete in the World Cup. Practicing a demanding sport like water polo while pregnant is no easy feat, yet Kelly managed it. Despite the intense physical demands, no one noticed the strain she was under, not even her boyfriend on the team, as Kelly kept her pregnancy a secret. To maintain her privacy, she wore a towel to the pool and only removed it before entering the water, avoiding showing her figure in a swimsuit by wearing loose clothing. Her boyfriend remained unaware but later recalled that she never let him touch her stomach and had limited contact with him. Around the 7th month of her pregnancy, an unexpected situation occurred. During practice, a swimmer in the water next to Kelly noticed her protruding belly and suspected that she might be pregnant. The swimmer shared her suspicions with her coach. Kelly's coach then asked her about it. Kelly firmly denied being pregnant, and the coach, upon seeing her small belly, was reassured. Kelly continued to lie, fearing that it would ruin her athletic career. Kelly was participating in a local water polo event. During the event, she felt unwell and was taken to hospital on a stretcher, where she gave birth to a baby girl. She experienced severe contractions, which likely began during the competition. After the birth, Kelly abandoned the baby, who was later adopted. She even named another man as the father. Despite this, Kelly was forced to stay in the hospital with the baby until she was discharged. She did not inform her family about the birth, telling her parents that she was with friends, which they believed. No one was worried about her, allowing her to carry out her plan. On her birthday, she managed to leave the hospital to have a drink with friends. She became intoxicated. After returning from the party, at the beginning of the year, Kelly began working as a teacher at a private school. She also continued her water polo career, representing Australia at the World Championships in Canada. Kelly performed well and won a silver medal. When Kelly turned 21, she became pregnant again. Despite being pregnant, Kelly maintained a romantic relationship with Duncan, who was deeply in love and considering marriage. However, she chose to keep her pregnancy a secret from her family, friends, and Duncan, even though they had been together for a long time and he was eager to marry her. Throughout her pregnancy, Kelly did not show any physical signs. She remained slim and did not alter her lifestyle. She regularly consumed alcohol, attended parties, engaged in intimate relationships, and continued to exercise vigorously, just as she always had. In a small suburb where everyone knew each other, Kelly faced the challenge of being the subject of gossip during her pregnancies. Many people envied her and suspected something was wrong, fueling rumors about her condition. This suspicion was partly due to changes in her behavior, like wearing towels or loose-fitting clothes. While those close to her didn't notice anything unusual, some outsiders found it odd. Regardless, Kelly consistently denied any rumors about being pregnant, insisting she was fine, and no one challenged her assertions, as there was no proof to suggest otherwise. In April 1996, Kelly's relationship with Duncan began to deteriorate. He moved to a different area and bought a house, creating distance between them. Later, Kelly discovered that he had cheated on her with one of the athletes on her team. Although this betrayal hurt her, Kelly chose to forgive him and work to save their relationship. On September 12, in the year 1996, Kelly secretly gave birth to her second daughter, whom she named Tegan. She had informed her relatives that she would be spending the weekend with friends, but instead, she went to the hospital to give birth. Kelly chose a hospital far from home, reducing the risk of encountering someone she knew. For the first time during her pregnancy, she used her real name and date of birth at the hospital. She even considered keeping the baby. However, she later changed her address and phone number. At the time, it was relatively easy to hide or change personal information. Australians had access to free health care, including anonymous services if needed. Unlike her previous children, baby Tegan felt the warmth of her mother, indicating that a bond had formed between them. Kelly spent time with her daughter, breastfeeding, bathing and sleeping together. During her labor, she consulted with doctors about her future as a mother. Unlike before, she tried to avoid or abandon her child. Just 2 days after giving birth, Kelly and her daughter were discharged from hospital. However, she missed an important test required in Australia, which involves taking blood from the baby's heel for newborn screening. The early discharge was necessary because of a lack of beds in the hospital. Both Kelly and her daughter felt well and were quickly discharged to make room for other patients. On the day she was discharged from the hospital, Kelly left home between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., and no one saw the baby again. She returned to her parents' house around 3 p.m. without her daughter. Since no one knew she had given birth, there were no suspicions or questions about her absence. That evening, she met her boyfriend and went out to a family wedding where she acted normally as if nothing had happened. Her behavior raised no concerns among her relatives. For the next 10 years, no one suspected the existence of Tegan. The baby had vanished during the time between leaving the hospital and arriving at her parents' home. Since only Kelly and the doctors were aware of the baby's existence, no one searched for Tegan. The doctors did not follow up on the baby's fate, so the information remained hidden. At the end of 1998, Kelly became pregnant again due to her carelessness. By the time she discovered her pregnancy, she had already broken up with her boyfriend, Duncan. This time, she decided not to tell anyone and wanted to have an abortion. In early February 1999, she visited the new abortion clinic in Queensland. However, her request for an abortion was denied because she arrived at the clinic in the 25th week of her pregnancy, which was too late for the procedure. She faced similar refusals at other clinics, leaving her with no choice but to give birth. Kelly secretly gave birth in the hospital and immediately put the baby up for adoption. By that time, the laws regarding adoption had changed, making the process more complicated. She spoke briefly with a social worker about her lack of documents. Kelly lied, claiming it was her first birth, and provided her real name but gave false information about her contact details and address. She also stated that she did not know who the child's father was. Because of the incorrect information she provided, the social worker's job became much more difficult. When the organization that assists new mothers reviewed her case, they realized they had been misled and that this was not Kelly's first birth. They began searching for her to discuss the situation, as they lacked the necessary information to legally finalize the adoption of the child. The adoption process in the country has changed significantly, but Kelly was not aware of this. Consequently, the social workers handling the adoption paperwork performed a thorough background check on the child's biological mother. As they investigated her history and life, they uncovered numerous inconsistencies and falsehoods. They investigated Kelly's situation and found that she likely had a daughter named Tegan, whom she had given birth to several years earlier. Kelly did not abandon Tegan, she left the hospital with her. However, the only information available was that Tegan was born in a hospital near Bern. After leaving the hospital, there was no communication from Kelly. She never Tegan took for checkups, vaccinations, or visits to the pediatrician. For 3 years, there were no updates about the child, and Kelly's biological mother denied that Kelly had ever given birth. This situation raised alarms, leading social services employees to reach out to Kelly's mother. She confidently insisted that they were mistaken and claimed she had no grandchildren. However, the social workers suspected something was wrong and contacted the police, who began their investigation. Meanwhile, Kelly went about her life, unaware that the police were getting closer to uncovering her secrets. In 2000, on her 25th birthday, it was revealed that she was pregnant again, and this time she chose to keep the child. For the first time, she shared this news with her family and boyfriend. This decision was likely influenced by Kelly's sports career, as she was aging and had stopped competing. Kelly tried to work as a coach and present herself as a respectable mother, which was beneficial for her at that time. However, she was unaware that the investigation into the disappearance of baby Tegan was intensifying. Later, police reached out to her regarding her previous pregnancies, and Kelly was summoned for questioning. This time, she could not evade it, as police had already gathered extensive information about her. Kelly admitted to 5 pregnancies, including those that were terminated, between the ages of 17 and 24. She had 2 abortions and gave birth to 3 children, all without her family's knowledge. She stated that Tegan was born from a secret relationship with an older man named Andrew Morris. Kelly met Andrew on Vis Beach Street, where he worked in finance, and they connected in a bar. Their relationship was short-lived. When Kelly discovered she was pregnant and shared the news with Andrew, he was excited and awaited the birth. She claimed that after the baby was born, Andrew took Tegan but did not clarify where they would live. Kelly was unable to provide further details about Andrew. Nevertheless, a portrait was created based on her description for the investigation. The police began by checking their records, with the initial goal of finding the baby's father, Andrew, to find out where the child was. The police were stumped because they could not find any men matching Kelly's description. The potential matches were either too young or too old, and no one by that name lived on Bibbich Street, which cast doubt on Kelly's story. They eventually discovered an Andrew Morris, who had previously been in a relationship with Kelly, but that was years before her child was born. When the police contacted him, he confirmed that he had not seen Kelly for a long time and did not have any children with her. He had moved away a long time ago and had never lived at the address Kelly had provided. A month later, the investigation hit a temporary pause because there were no new leads on the child. However, a new police took over the case, and Kelly was called in for questioning again. She recounted the same story she had shared with the previous police, but some details had changed, and which the new police noticed. For instance, the father's last name had suddenly shifted from Andrew Morris to Andrew Norris. With a friendly smile, Kelly claimed she might have made a mistake during the earlier questioning and now remembered the correct last name, which confused the police. They directly asked her if she had killed her daughter. Kelly was surprised and denied it, asking to stop the audio recording of the interrogation. She was clearly distressed, mainly worried about how discussing her pregnancy might impact her career. However, there wasn't enough evidence to charge her, so the Kelly was released, and the investigation continued. Police, after considerable effort, were unable to locate Andrew Norris. However, They were unable to find any men matching Kelly's description, nor were there any children resembling Tegan enrolled in schools or kindergartens in the Minley area or surrounding communities. Police sifted through some 86,000 birth records in an attempt to identify potential adoptive parents for the child, but they found no new leads. Despite Kelly's increasing dishonesty, she continued to mislead the police. She said she saw Tegan 1-year-old in mid-1997, but no one could confirm her claim. Despite this, the police remained optimistic and continued their investigation. They contacted Kelly's ex-boyfriend, Duncan, as her relationship with him coincided with the clandestine relationship that led to Tegan's birth. Duncan maintains that he did not know about Kelly's affair. Duncan suspected that Kelly was pregnant, but she never mentioned it to him. He noticed that she never let him touch her belly, though he didn't think much of it at the time. They lived apart and only saw each other occasionally. He willingly agreed to provide his DNA for testing. The results showed that he was not the biological father of Kelly's first or third child, as both were adopted by other families. Unfortunately, the police did not have DNA samples from the missing baby, so they couldn't confirm if Duncan was the father of Tegan. Connecting all the data to confirm Tegan's existence was a challenge because information about the mother and baby was incomplete and inaccurate, making the investigation even more difficult. While the police worked to solve the mystery and find the Tegan, Kelly continued her life without concern. During this time, rumors spread around town that Kelly had multiple abortions, had children, and abandoned them. These rumors damaged her coaching career and damaged her reputation. Kelly eventually gave birth to a baby girl, whom she chose to keep, and she introduced her to all her relatives. In 2004, to help restore her reputation, she married the father of her fourth child. The police were unable to get any information about Tegan's father, Andrew Norris. Kelly frequently changed her story, which caused the police to lose confidence in her. The case stalled and they offered Kelly a deal. If she pleaded guilty to the child's murder and revealed where the body was buried, she would not face any charges and could avoid jail time. Despite these terms, Kelly maintained her innocence, claiming that she did not kill the child. She claimed that the child was still alive and suggested that both the child's and the father's names may have been changed, or that they may have left the country and are now untraceable. She believed that this was the reason why the police had been unable to locate them. The police found the scenario unlikely. Why would Andrew change both his name and Tegan's if he hadn't kidnapped her? He could have simply taken his daughter away from her mother and updated the necessary paperwork, enrolling her in a nursery, school, or hospital. Why did he remain in hiding for so many years? There is no clear reason for this. The situation was further complicated by a ban on sharing information about the case, which prevented police from seeking help from the media or the public. When Kelly declined a plea bargain and police failed to investigate for years, they concluded that Tegan was dead and the case was treated as a murder. They also deemed Andrew to be a fictitious person. However, there was no solid evidence supporting these claims. Despite the absence of direct evidence or testimony against Kelly, she was charged with Tegan's murder on November 17, 2009. Kelly maintained her innocence, and the case was referred to court. The prosecution claims that Tegan's murder occurred on September 14, 1996, the day Kelly was discharged from the hospital. Shortly after leaving, the baby went missing. Kelly had very little time to commit the crime and dispose of the body. To protect her social status and image, Kelly hid her pregnancy and discarded the baby. She returned home the same day as if nothing had happened, met her boyfriend, and went to celebrate a relative's wedding. During the trial, Kelly maintained her innocence. Her first boyfriend, Aaron, supported her and they rekindled their relationship after her divorce. He shared that it was difficult for them to decide to terminate her pregnancy the first time, and it was a difficult healing process for Kelly, leading him to believe that she was not capable of murder. However, he did not know that she later had another abortion and gave birth to the children she abandoned. In front of the jury, the prosecutor had no concrete evidence, witnesses, or bodies. Only circumstantial evidence against her. Prosecutors described Kelly as a dangerous, manipulative person who would do anything to get what she wanted. Her ability to abandon her children raised suspicions about her capacity to kill. A psychiatrist confirmed that Kelly displayed narcissistic traits and was adept at playing the victim. The trial lasted 4 months and was complicated. Despite the uncertainty of the indictment, the jury found Kelly Lane guilty, not of murdering Tegan, but of perjury. The verdict was handed down on December 13, 2010. The trial reconvened on April 15, 2011, when Kelly confessed to killing Tegan. She was sentenced to 18 years in prison. As a mother unable to care for her many children, she began her sentence in prison, with all of her appeals being rejected. During the trial, Kelly displayed no emotions, appearing indifferent to her baby's fate, which likely influenced the jury's decision. After entering prison, she broke up with Aaron but continued to send him love letters. Meanwhile, Aaron had begun dating someone else. This new girlfriend requested in a reply letter that Kelly stop contacting them, which angered Kelly. In response, she sent letters to Aaron's new girlfriend and asked her friends to harass her. Kelly's cellmates joined in, insulting Aaron's new girlfriend on social media. The woman, tired of being harassed, decided to end her relationship with Aaron. Kelly, 48, is currently serving a prison sentence but will soon be eligible for parole. She maintains her innocence and insists that her daughter is still alive. Kelly's parents fully support her and believe the court's decision was unfair due to a lack of evidence linking Kelly to the child. In an interview, Kelly Lane revealed that she hid her pregnancy to avoid embarrassing her parents. She said that she had taken birth control pills incorrectly multiple times, leading to unwanted pregnancies. New, alarming information has emerged in connection with the case. On May 12, 2023, a taxi driver contacted the police and provided a tip. He revealed that on the day Kelly was discharged from the hospital, he had picked her and her baby up. During the ride home, Kelly asked him to stop the car. She then got out and left the baby on the side of the road. Although the driver testified to this, he did nothing at the time. After dropping Kelly off at home, he was racked with guilt and decided to go back to check on the baby. When he arrived, he saw a woman who said she would take care of the baby, but he left without any information about her. The police attempted to verify this account, but they could not find any confirmation or anyone else who had seen the woman. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Heidi Broussard. 33 years old Heidi Broussard worked as a waitress in a small restaurant in Buda, Texas, which has a population of around 7,000 people. She was also attending veterinary school, aspiring to become a veterinarian. Recently, she got engaged to her boyfriend, Shane Curry, after being together for 10 years. They met while working together and quickly fell in love. They has a 5-year-old son named Silas, who was born while they were still living in Louisiana. Heidi's best friend, Megan Firemuska, is also 33 years old and works as a wedding planner. The two met at a children's camp when they were 11 and have been best friends for 20 years. In early 2019, when Heidi announced she was pregnant with her second child, Megan shared that she was also expecting. Heidi was thrilled about their pregnancies and looked forward to spending time with Megan, sharing parenting experiences, and supporting each other. They began spending more time together, planning every moment of the pregnancy, bought baby clothes, cribs, and diapers, attended childbirth classes, and even went swimming together. Megan was present at the births of both of Heidi's children, including baby Margot in November 2019. They were so close that Heidi hoped their daughters would grow up to be best friends, just like them. At 7:30 a.m. on December 12, 2019, Heidi dropped off her 5-year-old son, Silas, at school. By 2 p.m., the school called her fiancé, Shane, to inform him that Heidi had not returned to pick up Silas, which was unusual since she was never late. Concerned, Shane quickly drove to the school, picked up Silas, and headed home. He expected that when he returned home, he would find Heidi and Margot at home. He thought maybe she had simply fallen asleep and forgotten to pick up Silas. However, when Shane arrived home, he was shocked to find no one in the house. He started to worry, thinking that Heidi might have taken Margot for a walk and lost track of time. He tried calling her, but she didn't answer. Then he considered that she might be with her best friend, Megan, who was about to give birth. Shane called Megan, but she said she hadn't seen Heidi that day, which was odd since they usually met daily for walks. As Shane searched the house for clues, he noticed that Heidi had left behind all of Margot's essentials, diapers, food, her wallet with money and cards, and the car keys. It suddenly hit him that something was seriously wrong. Heidi never went out with Margot without these items. Shane grew increasingly worried. Then, he called 911 around 7 p.m. to report Heidi and their newborn daughter's disappearance, Margot. The police arrived quickly and began searching for them. They examined the house and found no signs of a break-in or struggle. Everything was neatly organized. Initially, the officer suspected Shane because the husbands are often involved in such cases. However, Shane had an alibi. He had been at work all day and was cleared of suspicion. Despite this, some people still suspected him. During an interview, people scrutinized Shane's behavior, consider him a guilty person. Shane recounted that he last spoke to Heidi on the phone around 8:30 a.m. She told him she had taken Silas to school, and then, she with Margot attended a book fair. She bought several books she had been eager to read. She also purchased children's books to read to their son, Silas. She is passionate about reading books and had been building her own library at home. After their conversation, Shane returned to work, and Heidi did not contact him again. Detectives started to thoroughly investigate the house and the nearby area. They found that Heidi's car was parked in the garage. According to Shane, she exclusively drove her own car and never used taxis. This indicated that she hadn't gone far and was likely still in the vicinity. Both she and Margot have been placed on the search list, and a major search is underway in the area. While checking the surrounding area, investigators discovered a surveillance camera at a neighbor's home. They asked the neighbor to provide video footage from that camera. Then began reviewing camera video footage and interviewing nearby residents. The videos show Heidi, Margot, and Silas arriving at school at 7:30 a.m. Later, she and Margot returned home. A while later, they left the house, getting into a silver car. The video quality was poor, making it impossible to identify the car's license plate or model. This was the last sighting of Heidi alive. A neighbor reported seeing she in their apartment complex that morning, carrying a small child and approaching a parked car. A woman exited the car and greeted her. Both women then got into the car with the child and drove away. The disappearances of Heidi and her daughter, Margot, were linked to a woman. The police officer began to identify this unknown woman. Shane mentioned that the silver car matched the description of his friend's vehicle. He was convinced the woman in the car was his friend Megan, as he believed Heidi would never get into a stranger's car. Megan had a key to their home, given to her for emergencies. Detectives reached out to Megan, but she denied any involvement in the disappearance. Megan also told the police that she had not seen Heidi that day and shared some other information. She suspected Shane was involved in the situation. Heidi had previously confided in her about experiencing physical violence from he. Heidi claimed that Shane drank heavily and was abusive. Although Heidi wanted to leave him multiple times, she discovered she was pregnant for the second time and decided to give him another chance. Shane proposed, and they started planning their wedding. For a while, their relationship seemed peaceful. However, it seems that Shane has abused Heidi again. Megan showed photos of Heidi with bruises, but many people were skeptical. Upon closer examination, one photo revealed a trace from an IV drip on her arm, while another showed a small bruise that likely came from everyday activities. These are not the same as signs of domestic violence. There is no proof that Shane attacked Heidi. Police records showed no calls to Heidi's home for help. Shane denied the allegations, asserting that he loved Heidi. They were preparing for marriage, and he maintained that there had never been any violence in their relationship. Investigators searched for additional CCTV cameras in the vicinity and discovered several nearby. They collected the footage and began analyzing it. The quality of the recordings was better than expected, allowing the detective to identify a car. It was clearly determined to be Megan's car. Shane identified her. It turns out that she met Heidi that day, although she had previously denied it. She was the last person to see Heidi and Margot before they went missing. Therefore, she became the main suspect in the case. Investigators kept an eye on Megan's home. They noticed her boyfriend, Christopher, leaving and decided to follow him, but he was just going to the store to buy baby formula. The detectives approached him and showed him a photo of baby Margot. He recognized Margot and he confirmed that Megan had referred to the child as her child. Margot is in the house with her. It is clear that she is involved in this incident. The police obtained a search warrant and returned to Megan's house in Houston. When they knocked on the door, Megan opened it, holding a baby monitor in her hand and looking very worried. Inside, a baby was sleeping in a crib. Megan claimed the infant was hers and insisted she had no involvement in the disappearance of Heidi and Margot, but no one believed her. Shane recognized his daughter, Margot, by her face and clothes. The Texas Rangers detectives noticed Megan's car outside, the same silver vehicle believed to have been used by Heidi when she left. As they approached the car, they noticed the stench of a decomposing body, a smell they were familiar with. Opening the trunk revealed a horrific discovery. Heidi's body was inside a large sports bag and in poor condition. Megan was immediately arrested, and DNA testing proved that she was involved in the incident. Margot was returned to her father, Shane. Shane couldn't believe that Megan, Heidi's best friend for over 20 years, could have killed her. They had a close and trusting relationship, rarely argued, and no one thought this would happen. After Heidi went missing, Megan called Shane daily to check on the investigation. Shane began to feel that Megan was overly fixated on Heidi, resenting the time Heidi spent with her husband and children without her. During the investigation, it became clear that Megan was actively involved in searching for Heidi. She researched Amber Alerts and the investigation online, searching for Heidi's name 162 times. An autopsy later revealed that Heidi had been strangled, leading the case to be classified as a homicide, and the investigation continued. Megan informed investigators that she had given birth at a birthing center in Woodland, north of Houston, on December 10th. Just days before Heidi's disappearance, and had brought the baby home the same day. However, when questioned, she could not recall the name of the center, making it difficult for investigators to verify her story. The police contacted all maternity hospitals in the state but found no record of a woman named Megan giving birth. It was discovered that she had not visited any medical facility and lied to her boyfriend, Christopher, about her weekly medical checkup. Investigators tracked the phone records of both Heidi and Megan, revealing that they had traveled together from Buda to Megan's house in Houston, where Heidi's body was found in Megan's car. The car had been parked near Christopher's house for an entire week, and Megan drove it daily, despite the overwhelming smell of decomposition from the body inside. How did Christopher, Megan's boyfriend, not notice the smell? He was later questioned by investigators. He explained that he and Megan had been together for about 2 years, but in March 2019, he grew tired of the relationship and decided to break up. He asked her to move out, but she refused, claiming she had nowhere else to go. Feeling sorry for her, he allowed her to stay, and they lived in separate rooms in his house with minimal communication. Christopher found it difficult to kick Megan out of the house, and when he learned that she was pregnant, he decided to give their relationship another chance. He touched her belly a few times during the pregnancy but didn't realize it was a false pregnancy. He admitted that he had never seen her belly when she was undressed, due to the tension in their relationship. But he noticed it was growing and assumed it was real. Whenever Megan had a doctor's appointment, Christopher was not there and she did not invite him. This made him feel comfortable because he did not want to go with her. He was also away during the birth and only learned that Megan had given birth to a daughter while walking on the beach. When he returned home and saw her holding a baby, Megan claimed the birth went smoothly and that she hadn't seen a doctor. Her family video called her and remarked that she looked happy with the baby. They had visited Megan a few days before the birth and thought she looked pregnant. She has a big belly. In reality, Megan had never been pregnant, she had been pretending the entire time. Megan faked her pregnancy, deceiving everyone, including her boyfriend Christopher. This was part of a troubling scheme to take Heidi's daughter, Margot. This plan was devised by her to keep her boyfriend. When Christopher learned the truth, he broke up with her and moved in with his mother for a while because he was being hounded by the press and couldn't live in peace. He was not charged with any crime, as police were confident he had no knowledge of Megan's intentions. He was only involved in the case as a witness. Megan grew up in a family of 9 siblings, and her youngest brother was only 9 years old. She always dreamed of having many children and a big family. But she cannot get pregnant. Her relationship with her boyfriend Christopher also quickly ended. Overwhelmed by despair, she developed a horrific plan. When she learned that Heidi was pregnant, she is extremely jealous of Heidi and dreams of being pregnant. She decided that Heidi's baby would be the solution to her problem. She tricked Heidi into getting into her car, then drove them far from home. Once there, she attacked and strangled Heidi, placing Heidi's body in the trunk before returning home. As the search for Heidi began, Megan pretends to be sad because his best friend is missing. She even contacted multiple local TV stations, urging them to cover the story, so that no one would think she was involved. Megan was later charged with kidnapping Heidi and Margot, as well as murder, and she faced the death penalty. It was revealed that Megan had a prior conviction for theft. The charges indicated that she had originally planned not only to kidnap Margot but also to murder Heidi to accomplish this. She realized that Heidi would not willingly give up her child and was prepared to commit murder to get what she wanted. According to Megan, Heidi's second pregnancy was unexpected, and at the time, her financial situation was challenging. Initially, she considered terminating the pregnancy. Megan asked her not to do this, and even asked she to give Megan's the baby, but no one took Megan's words seriously. They thought she was joking. This might have been when Megan devised her plan. Ultimately, Heidi decided against terminating the pregnancy, and she and Shane chose to keep the child. However, Shane feels confused and doesn't know how to manage life with 2 children. Shane suspected that someone else was involved in the case. For at that time, Heidi was bigger and stronger than Megan, and Megan wouldn't have been able to handle everything on her own. He thought someone must have assisted Megan with the murder. He also did not understand how Megan could have stuffed Heidi's body into a bag and put it in the trunk of the car by himself. Heidi's family also suspects that Megan had help, but they don't think it was Christopher, as he wanted to break up with her. They believe Megan may have manipulated him into staying because of the child, suggesting he became a victim of her deception. A witness who claimed to have seen someone else in the car with Megan and Heidi, but this person did not see their face. Megan was in the front passenger seat, Heidi was in the back, and a stranger was driving. However, Shane never confirmed this information. Megan told Heidi and Shane that she had given birth to a girl on December 8th, but she did not show the baby to anyone, not even Heidi. Megan also did not share pictures of her newborn daughter on social media and very secretive about it. It is rumored that she had a nightmare about someone kidnapping her child, which frightened her and she decided not to show the baby to anyone. Before she disappeared, Heidi shared her worries with Shane about Megan. She found it strange that Megan didn't invite her family, although she invited Megan to attend the birth twice. She wanted to be with Megan at this crucial moment, and she felt offended by Megan's choice to keep it private. Megan explained that she was superstitious and preferred not to share the moment with others. Additionally, Shane recalled another odd incident. When Heidi was discharged from the hospital after giving birth, Megan, who was supposedly 37 weeks pregnant, can't leave the baby and constantly asks to hold the baby in her arms. She was very concerned about the child, which made many people suspicious, but at that time no one seemed to notice. The reasons behind Megan leaving Heidi's body in the trunk of her car instead of hiding it elsewhere remain unclear. In court, Megan continued to insist that the child Margot was hers. During a psychiatric evaluation, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. However, she was ultimately deemed sane and competent to stand trial. Throughout the trial, the evidence overwhelmingly pointed to her guilt, indicating that she had carefully planned the murder over several months. Following her lawyer's advice, Megan agreed to a plea bargain with the prosecution in order to receive a lighter sentence. To avoid the death penalty, she gave up her right to appeal. Heidi's family agreed to the decision to avoid protracted legal battles. Megan Fire-Muska was sentenced to 55 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sonia Ivanova. Sonia, a 19 years old, a Native American resident, grew up in a small village about 180 kilometers southeast of Nome, Alaska, USA. She dreamed of living and studying in Hawaii, but she needed to earn money first. Determined to make a change, she decided to take action. Along with her best friend, Timer, she moved to Nome, where she got a job as a hospital administrator. Timer found work as a hotel receptionist. They shared an apartment and felt comfortable in their new surroundings. Without a car, they walked everywhere. Sonia's family was concerned for her safety because there had been incidents of Native American residents disappearing in Alaska. They were worried because she was too naive and gullible, making her vulnerable to deception. On Sunday, August 10, 2003, Sonia and Timer went to a bar to relax with friends. They stayed until 11 p.m., then left. Timer went to spend the night with other friends since she had to work in 6 hours. Sonia, having a day off, decided to enjoy a walk in the summer rain, which she found comforting and warm. As they said goodbye, they didn't realize that it would be the last time they would see each other. At 5 a.m., Timer came home to get ready for work. She was surprised to see that Sonia was not sleeping at home. At first, she thought Sonia might have slept over at other friends' houses. Throughout the day, she tried contacting Sonia multiple times, but all attempts failed, which made her worried. She decided to call Sonia's sister, Christina, and Christina's husband, Tim, but they also didn't know where Sonia was. Tuesday came, and Sonia still hadn't returned home, increasing Timer's anxiety to the point of panic. She remembered that Sonia never went anywhere without makeup. If Sonia had planned to spend 2 days with friends, Sonia will definitely stop by the house to pick up mascara and lipstick. After finishing her work shift at 5:15 p.m., she contacted the police to report Sonia missing. The police Reburn was skeptical, he thinking Sonia might be with friends, and asked Timer to wait. None of the people interviewed knew where Sonia had gone. Christina and Tim were also actively searching. They searched every part of the city and questioned everyone about Sonia's whereabouts. Their next lead was a young man named Kyun, who was a friend of Sonia and whom she apparently liked, but they couldn't locate him either. All their hopes were placed on the police. However, initially, the known police were not interested in searching for Sonia. It was only after the hospital where Sonia worked reported her disappearance that investigators seriously took on the case. Reburn questioned Timer once more. According to her, there is no problem between them. Sonia seemed happy. There were no arguments, and if they ever had misunderstandings, they would talk it out and quickly reconcile. Then, she joined the search operation with many volunteers and, along with her friend, searched for Sonia on the outskirts of the city. A moment later, the police received a call. Timer was hopeful, thinking that Sonia had been found. Indeed, Sonia was found, but the news brought no joy. A few hours earlier, a fireman noticed fresh tire tracks on a deserted road and decided to investigate. Soon, he was at the police station and tell everything. The officer Bran asked the fireman to show the location, and together they went to an abandoned gold mine. What the officer saw there shocked him. Although he couldn't see the woman's face, he immediately knew it was Sonia. When he learned what happened to Sonia, Timer felt extremely painful. Even after 20 years, the pain still lingers in her heart. It was extreme sadness, hopelessness, and anger. She was primarily angry with herself, believing that if she hadn't left Sonia alone to visit her friends for the night, Sonia might still be alive. Meanwhile, the investigation into the terrible murder began. Due to lack of skills and equipment, local detectives had difficulty investigating the case. So they turned to the Alaska Bureau of Investigation, ABI, for help, which specializes in investigating complex crimes such as murder. When investigators arrived, they immediately secured the scene. They using road barriers and shelter tents, fearing that precipitation might destroy important evidence. During their investigation, they discovered blood traces that had been driven over by a car. So, they suspected the perpetrator might have been responsible. Upon closer inspection, detectives noticed an unusual detail about the tire marks. One tread was different from the other three. This suggested that the suspect's vehicle had two different types of tires. Additionally, they found blue paint stains, likely from a vehicle. Because the paint stains are quite high above the ground, investigators theorized that the vehicle could have been an SUV or a truck. Further investigation revealed that Sonia had not been raped. There was no DNA evidence on her body or at the crime scene. This brutal murder has left the town's residents bewildered. And they do not know who is responsible. Sonia, a friendly girl, had no known enemies and hadn't been in conflicts with anyone. Officer Reburn revisited the list of Sonia's friends and was particularly interested in Daniel Ango, also known as Kyun. Tim and Christina had tried to reach him during the search for Sonia, but he did not respond. Police were aware of Kyun because previously, his ex-girlfriend had filed a complaint against him for mistreating her. He was considered a suspect, not only because of his temper but also because he owned a blue truck, have different tires. When investigators examined the vehicle, they discovered a blue awning with blood stains inside, as well as blood on white sneakers and one of the 3 guns in the truck. The tires were tested with a special chemical, revealing additional blood stains. Kyun was brought in for questioning. He stated that he hadn't seen Sonia for 2 weeks. He also was out of town hunting with friends when she disappeared. Despite this, detectives decided to investigate further. Later, He explained that the blood in his car came from a hare he accidentally hit. He said he had to put the hare out of its misery, but then suggested it might have been a porcupine he shot while hunting. With that, the interrogation ended, and he left the police station calmly. Timer and Christina are unhappy with the police investigation and feel it is stalling. A week after Sonia's body was discovered, they went to the Nome police station and attached a photo of her to the wall outside. An officer came out, told them to leave, and removed the photo. Despite this, Timer showed up at the station every morning at 8 a.m., standing there to demand answers. The public did not know that investigators had identified Kyun as the prime suspect and were not investigating anyone else. However, the detectives were mistaken. The blood found in Kyun's truck was not human, the tire tracks at the crime scene didn't match his vehicle, and the blue paint traces didn't match his truck's color. Kyun's story was true, and the investigation was halted. Only 2 of the 8 local police officers are still actively investigating the case: Officer Reburn, who had received information from Timer about Sonia, and Officer Brian, who was the first to arrive at the crime scene. However, Brian was unhappy with the investigation because he had been assigned to the night shift, which prevented him from conducting interrogations. Red Bear, according to Brian, didn't seem to take his job seriously and was slow to share new information with him. Brian is determined to find out the truth. He decided to review the case file during his night shifts. Suddenly, he noticed a message from a woman. She mentioned that she had seen Sonia while Sonia was missing. She saw Sonia get into the car. This was new information for Brian, and he quickly sought out the woman. He had a detailed conversation with her. The woman's name was Florence. She was surprised that no one had contacted or interviewed her. She explained that she had been standing outside her house with her sister, smoking, when Sonia walked by and greeted them. Then, a car passed by and blocked Sonia's path. He said something to her, after which she got into the car. They drove off in the direction where Sonia's body was found a few days later. Officer Brian thanks Florence and he begins to think about her statement. He was convinced that the ABA agents needed to return to the city and continue the investigation. One detail from Florence's story unsettled Brian. She had seen a sticker on the car Sonia entered, which read Nome Police Department. This suggested that one of his colleagues might be Sonia's killer. He needed to process this information. The ABA team, led by Eric Burette, returned to Nome to investigate Florence's testimony further. Eric informs the group about 2 policemen who were on duty at the station the night Sonia went missing, Matt Ons and Stan Ulker. At that point, both of whom had been with the Nome Police Department for 3 years. There were several people involved in the case, and everyone was required to go to the central office of Polly Angie for questioning and a lie detector test. However, something strange occurred. A couple of weeks after the crime, an officer discovered that a service car was missing. That same night, a search operation was launched. At 2:51, Matt called his colleagues to report that he had found the car in an abandoned area, near where the body was hidden. 2 minutes later, he called again, he saying, "There were shots there." Several police officers rushed to the scene, but they found nothing unusual. Police found the missing car in a safe place, dark place. Matt admitted that he was terrified when he heard the shots and thought about his 4-year-old son possibly growing up without a father. He said that perhaps he was not cut out for police work. The officers inspected the stolen car and immediately noticed the broken window on the driver's side. Next, they saw an envelope on the driver's seat, amidst the glass shards. Inside the envelope was a letter, in which the stranger expressed his hatred for the police. They claimed that stealing the car was easy and that Sonia was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, implying that it was not her fault. The person mentioned that Sonia mistook him for a policeman. He warned them to be careful, saying that he was watching their every move. He threatens that if they leave him alone, he would leave them alone, but if they came too close, he would shoot them in the head. The unknown person not only left this threatening letter in the car but also included evidence in the envelope to remove any doubt that he was the one who killed Sonia. Along with the note, police found a membership card for the fitness center Sonia used to visit. How did the criminal steal the police car? It was later discovered that official cars were almost always unlocked, and the keys were often left in the ignition. Therefore, stealing the car is not difficult. Initially, two officers, Stan and Matt, were questioned. Their testimonies were almost identical. That evening, they were called to a domestic violence incident. The man who caused the incident attacked them, then he was arrested and taken to the police station. Stan stayed in the office to handle paperwork, while Matt patrolled the streets alone. This occurred between 1 o'clock and 1:30 a.m. Matt reported hearing gunshots, but he spent an hour trying to locate their source without success. His shift ended at 7 a.m., and he went home. Both officers, Stan and Matt, stated they did not see Sonia that night and were not involved in her death. Since their stories matched, a lie detector test was used to further investigate the incident. When asked, did they offer Sonia a ride on August 11, 2003? Both individuals answered no. They gave the same response when questioned about her murder. Further questions focused on Matt's sex life, leaving him confused. It seemed he didn't understand why these questions were being asked. At that time, Matt didn't know that Eric, the lead investigator, was also in the room and is keeping an eye on him. Eric had learned from colleagues that Matt was a typical person, although he didn't always follow the rules. Matt preferred night shifts and often volunteered for them. Occasionally, he invited friends to ride in the patrol car with him, despite repeated warnings from management not to do so. In March 2003, Matt was accused of using his squad car to meet women. He allegedly having sex with them while on duty. Unlike many who use Tinder and similar apps, he had his own method. He would drive slowly in the patrol car, approach women, and offer them rides. When confronted with these allegations, he denied them, and the investigation continued. The city discovered that Matt's personal life was troubled. In a custody battle in court, he is trying to sue his wife for custody of their 4-year-old son. The child currently lives with his mother, but the boy also visits his father because his parents are separated. On the morning of August 12, Matt called his wife to say he couldn't pick up their son because he had to work on a missing girl case, which might take a long time. His wife confirmed this to the FBI. When asked if she was sure the phone conversation took place on August 12, she affirmed with certainty, because that day was her birthday. At that point, when Sonia had not yet been reported missing, then how could Matt know she was missing? On October 25, he was arrested and charged with Sonia's murder. This news didn't surprise everyone. 6 women reported to the police, accusing Matt of not only failing to maintain order and security on the streets but also posing a threat to many people. They felt relieved after his arrest. One woman claimed that when she was drunk, he detained and assaulted her in the squad car. She didn't report it immediately, fearing disbelief due to her intoxication. 2 other complaints were filed against him, but they were not properly addressed. Investigators have no evidence to prove Matt was involved in the murder. They don't know where Sonia's clothes are or where he hid the weapon. And they found nothing suspicious in the patrol cars. The detectives worried that their information wouldn't convince the jury of Matt's guilt. However, they were about another lead, a hunting camp about 30 kilometers from the city. He frequently visited this camp, and a witness saw him burning his gloves there. If true, he might have destroyed other evidence at the camp. At there, investigators thoroughly examined the ashes. Finally, they found an important piece of evidence, burned shoes with laces bearing the imprint of the shoe manufacturer Schumacher. Sonia wore shoes of this brand. The ashes were collected and taken to Nome. Over several days, detectives searched for more evidence. They soon found several more pairs of shoes, parts of a bra, and a button inscribed with LT. Sonia's sister confirmed that the button belonged to Sonia's clothes. A mailbox key was found in the hallway, and it turned out to be the key to Matt's mailbox. Then, a police department employee suggested where the crime weapon might be. Investigators suspected the weapon could be a .22 caliber Jennings pistol, which was indeed found in the storage facility. According to the officers, Matt took it for his criminal activities and later returned it. Unfortunately, this could not be proven due to a lack of evidence. 2 months after Matt's arrest, Sonia's relatives and ABA employees encountered a new issue. He hired an experienced lawyer and was released on bail with his help. The residents of Nome were shocked that the killer was freely roaming their small town, but they were powerless to stop it. Matt's trial began on January 18, 2005, but after 40 hours of jury deliberations, the jury still failed to reach a verdict. The prosecution's evidence was not convincing, and Matt walked out of court again a free man. In the second trial, the prosecution presented evidence to the jury, including Florence's testimony about seeing Sonia get into a car labeled Nome Police Department, Matt's wife's testimony about Sonia's disappearance shortly before Sonia was officially reported missing. Traces of Sonia's clothing found along with the key to a box, and the murder weapon that was stolen and later returned. However, Matt's lawyers challenged all these points. They argued that Matt's wife had likely misremembered the date. They also contended that the traces of clothing and the gun were not connected to Sonia's murder. Because of this conflict, the jury could not reach a consensus on whether Matt was guilty or not, so he was acquitted at trial. This case has made the public extremely indignant. Many believe Matt was guilty of the crime, but he managed to escape justice. Investigator Eric, however, found a new lead. As astonishing as it seems, this is indeed what happened. Eric's neighbor said Charlotte, a friend of Matt's who was staying at his house, shared the news. It turns out Charlotte found a membership card in Matt's bedroom. If so, then this incident may be related to Sonia's murder. Eric asked the neighbor whether Charlotte told him about the discovery before or after the police car was found. It turned out Charlotte mentioned it before the theft. This confirmed Eric's suspicion that Matt stole the car himself to distract the investigation. But who found the patrol car? Matt stated that gunshots were heard 2 minutes after the car was located. That night, Matt left without his service weapon or flashlight. This raised the possibility that he might have planted Sonia's fitness club membership card on the front seat. Charlotte was called as a witness during the second court hearing and questioned again. When asked if she saw Sonia's card or wallet on Matt, she denied it. Despite being under oath, her answers didn't change. Investigators, however, suspected that she might be withholding such information. They were prepared and presented evidence in court of an earlier conversation between the officer and Charlotte. In that discussion, she admitted she had seen Sonia's ID or membership card along with other personal belongings. Charlotte eventually decided to testify in court. Her testimony proved to be crucial. Matt Ons was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to 101 years in prison. This tragic incident has left a stain on the city, causing people to lose faith in law enforcement. Sonia's family chose to hold an open casket funeral, allowing everyone to approach and say their final goodbyes. However, justice prevailed, and Matt Ons received the punishment he truly deserved. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Gladys Ricart. In 1979, in Tamboril, Dominican Republic, 20 years old, Gladys Ricart was raising her young son alone after her high school relationship failed. Her sister Norma lived in the United States, and she dreamed of joining her. Determined to make her dream come true, she worked tirelessly, saved every penny, and made many sacrifices. Eventually, her hard work paid off, and she was able to move to the U.S., settling with her sister's family in Manhattan, New York. However, she could not afford to bring her son Davis with her initially, so he stayed with family back in the Dominican Republic. After arriving in the U.S., Gladys focused on learning English and found a job. She worked diligently to save enough money to reunite with her son. By 1983, she succeeded in bringing 4-year-old Davis to the U.S. Determined to build a brighter future, she enrolled in college. Believed that education is the key to opening up better opportunities for yourself. She graduated with a degree in economics and used her knowledge to pursue a career in accounting. Due to her hard work, she quickly became a top expert and one of the most important employees of the company. Gladys started from the very bottom and worked her way up to become the chief accountant at a large travel agency in the heart of Manhattan. Over time, she improved her English, pursued an education, built a successful career, and saved enough money to buy an apartment. In many ways, she had achieved the American dream. The only thing missing was a family and true love. Despite this, she was cautious when it came to relationships. While it seemed that she prioritized her career over marriage, this was deep down. She longed to meet her soulmate. By 1992, after living in the United States for 10 years, Gladys had a daily routine. She took the subway to work in the morning and returned in the evening to her sister's house. One day on the subway, she met Agustin Garcia. He is a well-known leader in Dominica and also a successful professional. At 40, he has built a successful career after immigrating from the Dominican Republic to the United States as a child. Like Gladys, he had risen from poverty to success. By the time they met, he owned several small businesses and lived in a large house with his 2 children from a previous marriage. Agustin was highly respected within the Dominican community and was known as a dependable and helpful individual. Having experienced the hardships of migration and immigration himself, he is passionate about helping anyone who wishes to pursue this challenging path. He eventually became the director of the Dominican Chamber of Commerce in New York, along with several other organizations connected to his homeland. Beyond his roles in these organizations, he was deeply involved in social initiatives. Through his efforts, several kindergartens and schools were established, establishing him as a respected and influential person in the community. Agustin seems to be the ideal mate for Gladys, a determined and compassionate young woman. What she found most appealing about him was his kind and gentle nature. He was polite, sociable, and carried himself like a true gentleman, which immediately caught her attention. Their meeting was purely coincidental, as Agustin rarely used the subway. However, on this particular day, his car broke down, and he ended up taking the train. He was instantly captivated by Gladys's beauty and decided to strike up a conversation. They spent the rest of the ride talking, exchanged phone numbers, and quickly arranged to meet again. From that moment, their romance began. Agustin frequently took Gladys to restaurants, treated her to exquisite meals, and showered her with expensive gifts. When her family learned about her new boyfriend, Agustin, they were happy for her. He seemed like an ideal partner and a good father to her son. After some time together, Agustin invited Gladys to move in with him, and she eagerly accepted this long-awaited proposal. According to what she shared with her family and friends, her greatest dream at the time was for Agustin to propose marriage so they could build a family together. She envisioned raising 3 children with him, and even hoped to have more children of their own. At that point, she was not yet 33 years old. Once Gladys moved in with Agustin, things quickly began to deteriorate. Her son, Davis, had great difficulty getting along with Agustin's children. The boy tried his best, especially because of the sincere advice of his mother, who always wanted him to learn how to build good relationships with people. However, Augustine's children treated Davis with arrogance, and the situation never improved. The situation is getting more complicated. Augustine consistently sided with his children, even when they were clearly in the wrong, which created strain in his relationship with Gladys. After 2 years of enduring such a life and constant arguments, she decided she didn't want to cause her son any more pain. She told Augustine that they should stop living together. Augustine agreed, but did not end their relationship. He helped her find a new house, just a few minutes' drive from his own. It was a spacious 2-story house, and he didn't hesitate to spend money on her, perhaps as a way to ease the tension between them. They continued to see each other when he visited she. By this time, her family and friends had grown so accustomed to he that they considered him practically part of the family. He introduced Gladys as his wife wherever they went. Although they were not legally married, but Gladys kept trying to convince Augustine to have a wedding. However, he firmly refused because of the negative experience in his previous marriage. He insisted he didn't want to marry or have children again. According to Gladys's relatives, over time, this situation took a toll on her. The happiness in her relationship gradually fades, and Augustine's unpleasant personality becomes more and more apparent. He frequently had affairs and increasingly exhibit over-controlling behavior. The situation becomes even more complicated for Gladys, as she has known about his actions, but kept silent for a long time to avoid causing conflict. Unfortunately, her silence only made things worse. During one argument, he chased she and attacked her. She managed to hide and lock herself in a room, but from that moment, she realized it was time to end the relationship. However, she remained fearful of his manipulation for a while. Gladys wanted a solid reason to break up, one that would leave Augustine with no way to argue. The simplest way was to catch him in one of his affairs. By the fall of 1998, the situation became more tense when she went to Augustine's office and caught him with another woman. This gave her the perfect opportunity to end things. She immediately told him that things were over between them, left his house, and informed all his acquaintances that he was no longer a part of her life. Even though they had broken up, Augustine was not ready to accept such changes. He considered Gladys as his property after 7 years together. Following their argument, he repeatedly called her, left gifts on her doorstep, including bouquets of flowers and even a Bible. Gladys thinks these gestures are just meant to make her come back, but her family believed they held deeper symbolic meaning. Regardless, she was determined not to rekindle their relationship under any circumstances. Several months later, Gladys met a man named James Preston Jr. at a restaurant during her lunch break. James, who also worked in accounting and moonlighted as a musician, immediately clicked with she. They quickly fell in love, and after a few meetings, they decided to make their relationship public. Over the next 2 months, they spent all their free time together, and eventually, they set a wedding date for September 26, 1999. Gladys and her family were overjoyed as her lifelong dream of a wedding and wearing a wedding dress finally came true. She immersed herself completely in planning the wedding, focusing on every step of the preparation with complete joy. She was so preoccupied that she didn't realize Augustine had been coming to her house nearly every night, watching her for hours. His obsessive behavior made it clear he couldn't let go of his possessiveness. On August 12, about 6 weeks before the wedding, Gladys and her fiancé, James, were enjoying a quiet evening together when Augustine suddenly showed up at the door. Initially, he calmly asked to speak with her, but she refused. His demeanor quickly changed. He began yelling and throwing stones at the windows. Worried he might get more aggressive, she called the police. Augustine was taken into custody, but she chose not to press charges, wanting to avoid causing him trouble and to stay focused on her wedding preparations. This decision turned out to be a significant mistake. In September, just 2 days before the wedding, Gladys went to a store to purchase some items needed for the bridesmaids. Unbeknownst to her, Agustin had been following her. He approached her, hugged her as if they were still in a relationship, and behaved as though everything was fine between them. Gladys didn't resist, fearing that rejecting him might provoke his anger. They exchanged a few words before saying goodbye. That evening, she confided in James and family, sharing her discomfort and concerns about Agustin's intrusive behavior. However, she had no idea just how dangerous he truly was. On September 26, 1999, the day she had long awaited, her wedding day, finally arrived. She was at home surrounded by her family and friends, preparing for her wedding ceremony. She wore a wedding dress, had her hair, makeup done, radiant and happy to be a bride. Photos and videos captured these joyful moments, which tragically turned out to be the final ones of her life. Meanwhile, the groom, James, was already waiting for her at the church. However, the joy of the wedding was spoiled when Agustin, who was watching her, suddenly appeared. He used violence to murder her, causing her instant death. When paramedics arrived, there was nothing they could do to save her. Her dream of a wedding was painfully unfinished. Agustin was immediately arrested and taken into custody without attempting to flee or resist. During his interrogation, he admitted to frequently driving past Gladys's house, claiming it was due to his sentimentality. On the morning of September 26, he was surprised to see a crowd of people dressed formally, along with several limousines parked outside her home. He claimed he had no idea she was getting married that day. After driving past the house multiple times, he eventually stopped in front of it. Still unsure whose wedding it was, he decided to go inside to find out. As Agustin got out of his car across the street, Gladys's brother, Juan, approached him cautiously, aware of his bad temper. Juan tried to convince him to leave to avoid disrupting the wedding. It was then that he realized she was marrying someone else, but he didn't show any reaction. Agustin claimed he had been invited to the wedding, so Juan did not stop him, and he calmly entered the house. No one objected to his presence. Initially, when questioned about the attack on Gladys, Agustin claimed that he had no memory of it. However, after a while, he confessed to the detectives. The next day, he was brought to court for a preliminary hearing where he faced the charges against him. During this hearing, he had the opportunity to plead guilty and avoid a lengthy trial. The bail was set at $5 million, showing that he is a major threat to the community. The attack quickly became a major focus of attention because of the extensive media coverage. Journalists raced to create sensational headlines, spread rumors, and even offer unsubstantiated theories. Images of the killer, Agustin, began to appear regularly on national news. The case's prominence attracted numerous lawyers, especially top lawyers, who want to use the trial to enhance their reputation and advance their careers. Agustin's trial was scheduled for October 2, 2001, allowing the defense nearly 2 years to prepare and build a more positive image for the defendant. The hired lawyers quickly engaged with the media, organizing press conferences and making public statements. Their objective was to influence public opinion about the crime by portraying Agustin as a victim. Their first move was to accuse Gladys's brother, Juan, and her son Davis of assaulting Agustin. They argued that there was no intention to kill Gladys, and her death happened accidentally when he defended himself from an attack by Juan and Davis. At the same time, the defense sought to discredit Gladys by accusing her of multiple betrayals. They claimed she had been planning to reconcile with Agustin, but was secretly preparing to marry James. According to the defense, this betrayal pushed Agustin into a mental breakdown, leading him to attack her. They stated that he had been devastated to discover that Gladys, who had been holding hands with him at the supermarket just the day before, was preparing to marry James. They believe this is a crime due to emotional outbursts, which qualifies as manslaughter under state law. If accepted, This argument would significantly reduce Agustin's punishment to a sentence of 5 to 10 years in prison instead of life imprisonment. The defense emphasized that Agustin was a compassionate person who cared about the Latino community in New York. This has had a strong impact on public opinion. When false rumors began circulating that Gladys had been unfaithful to Agustin, her image in the public eye became negative. Some even believed that she deserved her fate. This was a devastating blow to her family. Realizing the immense damage caused by Agustin's legal team, her relatives started attending every press conference to protect her reputation. Gladys's family, siblings, and extended relatives denied the infidelity rumors, calling them malicious lies. They emphasized that the relationship between she and Agustin had ended long ago and could not be rekindled. It was Agustin who was always following her and acted inappropriately. They emphasized that out of compassion, Gladys did not file a lawsuit against him before the murder. The judge was informed about the murder. Press conferences and interviews with journalists were officially prohibited, but they had already caused harm to Gladys's reputation, create difficulties for the prosecution. During the trial, the defense team continued to depict Agustin as a victim, while tarnishing Gladys's image. However, the prosecution has one big advantage: the attack and Gladys's death had been caught on camera. The opening part of the wedding ceremony and preparations were recorded, but Agustin hadn't noticed it. Before the trial began, only the judge was allowed to view the footage. The defense argued that showing the video to the jury was unfair and worked hard to block its usage as evidence. After lengthy deliberations, the court ruled that the video could be used, but only the part where Gladys was attacked. This was a 15-second clip, and the prosecution worried it wouldn't be enough to persuade the jury, particularly since the defense could argue the clip was taken out of context. This limitation gave the defense some opportunity to build their case. The defense argued that Agustin was forced to take up arms after being attacked by Gladys' brother and son, and claimed that Agustin's attack on Gladys was unintentional. Despite the objections of Gladys's family, the defense insisted that everything stemmed from her dissolute behavior. They presented several witnesses, including a neighboring family. The father and daughter testified that they had recently seen Gladys at Agustin's house and believed the two were still living together as a couple. In reality, Gladys had visited only to collect her remaining belongings. Through such testimony, the defense succeeded in making the jury sympathize with Agustin. However, the prosecution was prepared to counter these claims. The prosecution relied heavily on video evidence showing the crime. The video captured Agustin murdering Gladys in front of her family, including her son, shows that he did not act in self-defense. The footage shows that after he entered her home, no one attacked or threatened him, contrary to his testimony. However, he still attacked Gladys as soon as he entered. The prosecution argued this was a premeditated act born out of jealousy. The prosecutor's office attempted to counter misleading statements from defense attorneys who sought to portray Gladys as an immoral person. There was evidence proving that after the breakup, Agustin had stalked she for an extended period. All of her relatives confirmed this. Even her son was afraid of he, knowing how cruel he truly was. Agustin's kindness and selflessness were merely a facade, hiding his true sinister nature. For at least several months, he had been surveilling her and making unannounced visits. In his car, authorities discovered a list of license plate numbers belonging to cars parked near her house. He wasn't just spying on her. He was meticulously tracking everyone in her vicinity, likely to distinguish the neighbor's vehicles from the car of her future husband, James. During the trial, Agustin made an unexpected and controversial decision. He chose to testify on his own behalf before the jury. This decision significantly influenced the outcome of the case. In legal practice, such a move can either be a strategic advantage or a disastrous mistake for the accused. The prosecution asked him to recount the incident that took place in the house. One would think he would tailor his testimony to fit the defense's arguments, that he acted in a state of temporary insanity and was not in control of himself. He alleged that Juan and Davis attacked him, but this claim had already been disproven by video evidence. He also said that at that time, he lost of awareness and could not remember how he attacked her. However, he did not provide any evidence to support his claim of temporary amnesia. Although Agustin tried to show remorse and even shed tears, his actions were not convincing enough. For the prosecution, his testimony only strengthened their case, as it contradicted the defense's argument and offered no plausible reason for his actions. On February 1, 2002, Gladys's family awaited the final verdict. After a lengthy hearing, the jury deliberated and found Agustin guilty of premeditated murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 30 years. Gladys was buried in her hometown of Tamboril in the Dominican Republic. Her body was brought home a week after her death and she was buried in her wedding dress. After his conviction, Agustin refused to speak publicly or give any opinion. A reporter later discovered that he turned to religion early in his imprisonment and began preaching to other inmates. Meanwhile, his lawyers fought for a reduced sentence, but several appeals were denied. Agustin remains in prison and will be eligible for parole in 2029.